transversal or the common thread here is about investment. How do we design those investments that are going to help us to achieve the kind of ambition that we have set ourselves?
Assessments have started at the Groblersdal Bridge border post outside Lephalale in Limpopo after operations were halted due to flooding. Groblersdal Bridge between South Africa and Botswana is among 4 border posts that have been affected. Senior SARS manager Memory Ndou says the floods affected offices including their warehouse. Ndou says workers have been relocated to other border posts.
The border was closed yesterday. I can confirm that on the 3rd of March 2025 because it has flooded and the water is continually flowing, rising to the abnormal level. And then the plan from government as BMA SARS is to redeploy employees to other ports.
The Gauteng Health Department says services at Charlotte Maxeke and Rahima Musa hospitals in Johannesburg have been impacted but not halted. This after Egoli Gas cut off supply to the 2 hospitals due to contractual disputes. The DA in Gauteng says Egoli Gas is owed 15 million rands by the department. Hospitals need gas for cooking, heating water and the sterilization of instruments. Gauteng Health Department spokesperson Mutalatali Mudiba says the matter is receiving attention.
Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital has electric autoclave in addition to the gas autoclave, so this mitigates any disruption to autoclaving. The facility's kitchen is operating with gas cylinders to mitigate the absence of central gas supply. At Charlotte Maxeke Johannesburg Academic Hospital, the cutoff has only affected the domestic hot water supply to the hospital and the sterilization of medical equipment. However, the facility continues to operate as normal.
One of the Zanzu nightclub directors, Neo Mwela, has condemned the assault incident at the club and has apologized to the victims for their ordeal. Mwela was addressing the media through his lawyer advocate Zolama Javu in Johannesburg today. A video has since gone viral on social media showing men being physically and sexually assaulted at the Pretoria nightclub. One person has been arrested and appeared in court yesterday. It emerged in court that another victim has been traced, bringing the number of complainants to 7. Majavu elaborates.
The police have not given an indication that they are treating him as a suspect. If anything, the police are engaging with him as a person from whom they can source some information to enable them to decide whatever they want to do. It has been reported in the media that other people are being sought. Those people who are being sought and pursued by the police are none other than him because he is here. The police know how to get hold of him. They have engaged with him.
The head of the European Commission has announced measures intended to greatly increase defense spending across the EU. Ursula von der Leyen says Europe is ready to take more responsibility for its own defense at a time when its security is under real threat and to further support Ukraine.
We're talking about pan-European capabilities domains like, for example, air and missile defense, the artillery systems, missiles and ammunition, drones and anti-drone systems, but also to address other needs from cyber to military mobility, for example. With this equipment, member states can massively step up their support to Ukraine.
Recapping on the top story, Minister of Electricity Dr. Hosiansu Ramokgopa says the African continent needs to design an effective investment method in order to have a sustainable future energy mix to enable it to compete globally. For SAFM News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Tau and Bafana's preliminary squad for World Cup qualifiers. Australia bowled out for 264 by India in the Champions Trophy semi-final clash, and Buck Prop signs for Stormers. More details at 3:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Durban North.
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us, because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
You and I have a country to build, difficult conversations to have, solutions to find, and stories to tell. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 p.m. to midnight.
So, here's a question to you. Has your medical aid gone up this year? That does not mean that you have to pay more for your car insurance too. Get a quote, and if our insurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 rands in cash. And make that 1,500 rands if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. SMS out to 30754. That's out 30754. With our insurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer in FSP, T's and C's online.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So wherever you may be, and I don't quite know, you could be in South Africa, you could be anywhere around the world. Either way, this is the National Pulse as we talk for 3 hours on the issues that you know impacts the psyche of the nation. So welcome to the show. My name is Ashraf Garda, and you can connect and raise your own issues that you feel strongly about, particularly things that you think moves the pulse of the nation on a daily basis. 086 000 2032 to call in. WhatsApp, text or voice note. Save that number, 0614 104 107. And as always, you can tweet on the X platform, tag SAFM Radio and tag me, Ashraf Garda. Do use the hashtag #TheNationalPulse. Lots of ways to listen to the show. You can listen on radio nationwide, on the SABC Plus app. You can listen on live streaming via the SAFM website, as well as visually. Just go to Facebook or to the SAFM X platform. You'll find us visually, meaning you can see exactly what we're doing behind the scenes when we host the show here. Right, talking about the show, we'll talk about JMPD department revealing that it's investigating cases of bribery amongst its cops. We'll talk about that. We'll certainly talk about issues about Kenya, looking at the impact of the US aid pullout in that region. We chat to Bruce Whitfield about his book, The One Thing that can save South Africa in many ways. We chat to Corne Mulder, the newly elected leader of the Freedom Front Plus. They are not happy with the Hawks' decision to investigate high treason against AfriForum, and there's more, and there's so much more, including the issue of the Zanzu nightclub. Just about everything we need to be talking about. So let's get to first things first then. The Johannesburg Metro Police Department, the JMPD, has revealed that it is currently investigating several cases, and listen to this, where police officers are suspected of soliciting bribes from motorists. What is even more shocking is that the investigation will probe fund transfers, so not just paying cash as many may think, or cool drinks as has been traditional. This is e-wallet transfers or cash apps, something that senses a more sophisticated way of bribery as opposed to the usual cool rinks, and that's evolved. Let's get the thoughts of the JMPD spokesperson, Xolani Fihla. Appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and let me also greet the listeners.
All right, so I take it now that you're investigating, this can't be one or two people. This sounds like it's a widespread issue of police officers taking bribes.
Yes, it's true. It has come with a deep concern. JMPD Internal Affairs Unit, of all the other cases that they are investigating regarding either misconduct or corruption or criminality within the department, what they have picked up that there is a great number of these cases where it is with this modus operandi, where it's suspected and alleged that officers are transferring victims' money either using e-wallet or cash sent through their own phones.
And what about so how many people you investigating now? How many officers you investigating?
Currently, there's 9 active cases. And what we are appealing, and we always are appealing regarding incidents like this, not only this specific type of modus operandi, but any misconduct and corruption within our ranks, our Internal Affairs Unit are investigating. So we are appealing for members of public, if they have any more information or any other type of evidence, to bring it forth to the JMPD so we can have a tougher stance against this scourge that we've come across.
Now, I have to say, based upon conversations that I've had anecdotally with people across the board, across the years, in fact, the issue of a bribe being given and therefore received by a police officer, be it Johannesburg or anywhere in the country, has got to be the world's worst kept secret. Everybody knows about it.
No, it's true, and that's why it not necessarily is directed towards our officers as well, but also to the members of public, not to offer any bribes to our officers, whether for them to be let go from being issued a citation or being arrested, because we know that when it comes to true definition of corruption, there has to be a corruptor and a corruptee, and it goes both ways. But at some instances, we do see that members of public are then forced to give our officers a bribe, and this is done by our officers, and it's a borderline between corruption and extortion.
Almost like coercion, extortion. So when you say forced, I mean, give me an example of force. What would force mean? Like, what would they be? What would be the circumstances, and what then would the officer be doing?
The circumstances for a perfect example, that you are stopped by either a Metro Police officer or a police officer, and they request to see your driving license. And when it comes to a traffic police, then if you don't have your license or your license is expired, then we are meant to give you a traffic fine. And then you say that, hey, unfortunately, my license is expired and there's nothing I can do, rather give me a fine. And then the officer will then insist of not giving you a fine, but rather you giving him something for you to be let go. And it goes to the extreme. This is one of the cases that we have come across, but other cases is when then the officer will make an arrangement to meet the victim at a certain place, where then they'll exchange the funds. And that's the extent that it goes to.
No, I mean, in the past, and these, what I'm saying, what I've heard, it's like a cool rink or a $20 or a $50. That's like basic stuff, right? The fact that we're talking about like a money transfer or a wallet, I mean, that can't be $50. That has to be much, much more. So there's a sophisticated racket then, I would suggest, then, coming from the police officer side, right?
Yes, it definitely is sophisticated. As you are saying, it's outside the traditional ways of what we think of bribery or inverted commas cold drink, where you hand over 20 Rand or 50 Rand. But what is also more sophisticated is that we're finding that it's alleged that the officers are using unknown or ghost cell phone numbers, and these are cell phone numbers which aren't recorded, and it's not easily you're not easily able to trace who this number belongs to. And that's why we are reaching out to the public that when you do report, take photos, take videos, but not impede on the officer's job, but take those photos, take the videos of the vehicle, give us the time, the location, and the date of the offense. It'll make it easier for us to trace the wrongdoers.
Okay. So let's take it from the police officer side, because I mean clearly that would be your primary area of interest, right? I mean they know it's wrong, right? What is your sense of the culture of these police officers in eliciting these bribes on a regular basis?
I think the culture will be making easy money off the street, and that's one thing that we totally condemn, because you are being paid at the end of the day by the municipality for you to be conducting these duties. So I think it becomes a thing of a person who can get money easily off the street, and we know that people do go through different challenges, either financial challenges or some type of addictions or abuse of some sort, either substances or other things like gambling, and people need to maintain that lifestyle. And we find that then officers tend to go that route to make sure that they maintain that lifestyle, or make sure that day to day they do have money. But at the end of the day, it is not tolerated within the department, and that is something that we are highlighting and ensuring that members of the public, they are definitely aware, but what's important is that they do report.
Okay. What happens next? They get reported, and you then investigate it, understandably so, and then you find out that yes, it's true, either by them admitting it or you find some other evidence. What happens next?
From there, then, of course, the internal process of a internal disciplinary action that takes place, and of course, the strictest disciplinary action when it comes to this type of incidents, when it comes to corruption, is then a dismissal. But you can also have other charges put on you externally, where it can lead to your arrest and you having a criminal record.
And what has happened up to now in terms of when there's been a case where a police officer has been found out? What's actually happened?
When an officer has been found out and they've been found guilty by the department, that is an immediate dismissal on our part.
Okay, so that has happened, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it has. With these cases, we're still investigating, but with previous cases, when it comes to corruption and misconduct, and especially corruption, that is a immediate dismissal.
How do you find out about this? I mean, obviously the police officer is not telling you about it, so how then do you get to know? What's the tip-off?
We get to know this through disgruntled members of the public. Of course, if you are forced to issue hand out a bribe to a police officer, it's not under your will, and you somehow feel disgruntled. And of course, members of the public then do come forward and report these cases to the JMPD, and it is a great thing. And as I did allude earlier on, that we are currently investigating 9 of these type of cases. So as I did say before, that we are encouraging members of the public, be vigilant, be aware, and if you do encounter these cases, come to the JMPD as quick as possible so that we can take swift action against the wrongdoer.
How do you respond, more sophisticatedly? Meaning that, I understand, and I think it's in Joburg now, they're going to have these webcams or body cams where they're going to carry all the time, which means every little action of a policeman or a police officer is recorded. I mean, would that be the same in this case with traffic police as well?
We are in the process of looking at getting body cameras. Of course, that will help a lot when it comes to these type of incidences, but not only just proving the wrongdoings of our officers, but also vindicating them from difficult situations. But when it comes to a response, to a practical response to these type of incidents, it goes 2 ways. Firstly, if you do respond immediately while you're at the scene, then our internal affairs unit can go to the scene and take action there. But secondly, if then you do leave the scene, you can call the anti-fraud and corruption hotline at 0800 20 directly to the internal Internal Affairs office at in the Village and Main Road and Loveday Street in the Johannesburg CBD.
Okay.
And then you lay down your facts, and a statement will be taken, and from there, then investigation will take place.
All right, that's where we can leave it. Kolani Fitler, the JMPD spokesperson, appreciate your time. In fact, I'll get that number and I'll give it out again because we just had a bad line at the end. So here's a question to you, right? Thank you for your time. Here's a question to you, wherever you may be in the country, not just Johannesburg, right? Have you been in a situation where you've had to bribe your way out of a traffic fine or some traffic offence on the one hand, or you've been offered, you've committed a traffic position where you've either not had your license or you've committed a offence rather, so there's a potential fine coming up, and you've been offered your way out of it by a bribe and you haven't taken it, or you have taken it. I don't need names, but I certainly like to know about it. Right, that number, by the way, the WhatsApp number 063 253 1928, and then the other number to call in, the toll-free number 0800, so 0800 203 712. Let's get your thoughts. I'm expecting many of you to connect and to call in on that issue. After all, that certainly moves the national pulse.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Be up your February with great value deals from Vodacom Business. Get the new Samsung Galaxy A16 on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for 379 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 29 Rand extra per month over 24 months and get the Samsung Galaxy Fit 3. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
All right, it's very much the season now, right? The G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group technical meeting has kicked off in the Western Cape. Now, from March the 3rd all the way up to the 5th to tomorrow, global leaders are convening to tackle critical anti-corruption strategies. Discussions will focus on three key areas: strengthening public sector integrity, enhancing asset recovery, and promoting inclusive participation. This meeting marks a key step towards global accountability, a message by the Department of Public Service and Administration.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Gada on SAFM.
Right, let's have a quick chat about traffic fines, or traffic bribes rather. Sam in Midrand, hi.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Go for it, Sam.
Anyway, myself, when I drive, always I make sure that I have money for traffic officers.
You make sure.
That is something.
Yeah. Why so?
So these people, they like money, honestly. Even if you don't have a stake, they'll find one so that they can give you a ticket. So, for example, if you go to where I'm staying, around Clayville, Ebony Park, there is a number of vehicles without license disc whatsoever, but they're always on the road.
Okay, and you say, like, you go prepared, you know that, and you don't feel bad about it at all, that you have to effectively, if you're in trouble, you have to bribe your way out of trouble. Yeah.
Yes, I think what is the way out, because of many people know, like the vehicles that I'm telling you, that they don't even have a license disc. I mean, they're driving on a national road, a public road, but they don't have licenses and so on. So the only thing they have is money, so that they can drive.
Okay, yeah. All right, Sam, thanks for that. I expect others will say something, whether it's similar or not, I wonder, but I certainly want to get your thoughts on that issue. Have you ever bribed your way out of trouble in terms of a traffic offence or no driver's license with you? Or alternatively, you've been offered a bribe by the police to do just that and you've said no, or you've said yes because, honestly speaking, in your case, you felt you were vulnerable and you had no choice in the matter. Would love to know. Don't really need to know names. If you want to remain anonymous, that's fine too. Let's talk about issues in Kenya now. There's been widespread demonstrations, by the way, in the Kakuma refugee camp. Why so? Well, that's because the protests erupted over food and water shortages in the camp, and this followed funding cuts from the U.S. Agency for International Development. We've been speaking about them all the last 2 weeks, USAID. This has also affected a huge portion of the health workforce in the East African country. According to UNAIDS, Kenya relies on direct U.S. funding up to 29% of its HIV-related spending. Let's get an understanding of what the issue is with Brian Olang, the Human Rights Advocate and Monitoring and Response Officer at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Brian, appreciate you giving off your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So you're saying, the impact, therefore, is immediate.
You can actually see the impacts that caused immediately. And what happened this week in Kakuma, you saw the protests and that were happening in Kakuma because of the funding being cut. Right now there are water shortages, there are food shortages. So the ripple effect of this is quite significant. And I hope, and our wish is, or our prayer rather, is that the U.S. president can actually look at the matter and look at the ripple effect and how this is affecting the locals or even the refugees in the country, because Kenya supports a lot of refugees from South Sudan, Somalia, some from Ethiopia. So there are a lot of refugees that Kenya supports. So with the funding cut, we are seeing the ripple effect of this, and it's quite immediate. And of course, if there is no water in the refugee camp, it means they'll probably go out to the communities, and this might actually even cause the clashes between the local communities and the Kenyan citizens.
Oh my goodness, right. Okay, so there's one is about relief for refugees. We're talking about food and water, as you've said. The other one is the issue of AIDS, right, in terms of maybe preventative treatment or maybe treatment after one has been tested positive for AIDS. Has that been affected as well?
And you see, currently, I don't think we won't feel the effects right now, but I think in the next few weeks or next few months, we'll actually see the effect of this.
Okay.
Because I think right now there are drugs in the country, and there are people who are able to access these drugs. But in the next few months, with the funding cut, of course, we'll be able to see the effect of this, and we'll see many people and millions of people suffering, getting affected directly by this directive. So for now, we are not seeing it, but I'm more than sure in the next few weeks or few months we'll see it.
Okay, it's all rather ominous, right? Let's go back then to the issue of the protests. So the protests were linked to what? Foods and water, is that correct?
Yes, after the funding was cut, it means now the refugee camps also have to cut costs, and this also led to, this has led to water shortages in the camp. And you can imagine the camps are situated in northern Kenya, which is it's semi-arid and very hot. So without water, really, these refugees can't survive. So you can imagine you're in a place which is semi-arid, the temperatures of 35 degrees or thereabout, and you don't have clean water, you don't have water to drink. This actually leads to the violence that you saw, because they went demonstrating, and the police responded negatively or responded with violence, as they always do, by shooting people, launching tear gas canisters, and that actually is what made the situation worse than it is.
Mm-hmm. We speak about protests. Give us an indication of the level of protests and frustrations. How many people? Who are they? What are they saying? What are they expecting?
Ideally, the Kenyan Constitution protects the right to protest. But what we saw recently in Kakuma is where the refugees were just protesting peacefully. They wanted the right to water. Water is a constitutional right under the Kenya Constitution. But the response of the police, of course, was negative. They responded by, violence, as they always do. So I believe that I think the only solution to this problem is by ensuring that, the funding continues so that these refugees don't suffer, because already the situations in the camp is a bit difficult. So you can imagine the difficult situation you're in, and then you add on to that by not accessing water, not accessing food. So, it's something that really the US government needs to look into.
But clearly the way it goes on at the moment, they're not going to listen to you, right? So what then can the Kenyan government do? Can anybody do something as a matter of urgency? Because what could develop here, unfold, would be an imminent humanitarian crisis, if that's not the case already.
No, I think what the Kenyan government needs to do right now, and this goes to all African governments, including South Africa, is that in the long run, we need to look at how do we fund our own HIV and AIDS programs. Because if you don't do this, then actually we have seen the power of the stroke of a pen can do in the US, where they decide, somebody wakes up one day on the wrong side of the bed and they decide they're not going to fund us. So it's about time that as African countries, we decide that we are going to lead our own programs, especially things to do with health, things which as Africans we are supposed to support ourselves, not depending on donors for those things.
Okay.
So, yes.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it at that. Brian Olang, Human Rights Advocate and Monitoring and Response Officer at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. It's a very disturbing story. Thank you for your time. If you want to listen to it again, catch the podcast, safm.co.za. Let's get the news headlines, just gone 3:30.
Thank you. In your headlines, Human Settlements Minister Thembi Simelane says they are committed to housing people closer to their workplaces. Minister of Energy and Electricity Dr. Hosian Tsoramohoba says the African continent needs to design an effective investment method in order to have a sustainable future energy mix. And the Border Management Authority says water levels have risen at its Stockport and Groblersdal Bridge ports of entry in Limpopo. For SAFM News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right to me, our very own Minister of Sport. You could use about Bafana.
Yes, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce has included Percy Tau in his 37-player preliminary squad to face Lesotho and Benin in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers this month. Tau last played for Bafana in June last year in the World Cup qualifying match against Nigeria in June, in the match that ended with a 1-1 draw. In terms of the other selected new faces, include Samukelo Kabini, Kulekane Ndamani, both from TS Galaxy, Diano van Rooyen of Orlando Pirates, and the likes of Ashley Cupido and Thabo Moloisane of Stellenbosch FC. Meanwhile, newly appointed Kenyan national team head coach Benny McCarthy has described the Harambee Stars as a sleeping giant who can reclaim their place in African football if their plan to resuscitate them comes together. McCarthy was unveiled yesterday in Nairobi as Harambee Stars head coach on a 2-year contract, and the last time Kenya played in the AFCON, it was in Egypt back in 2019, but McCarthy sees them as a team with huge potential.
It's a sleeping giant in my eyes. I looked at the project, and it's a country that has a lot of potential. They have some really good, talented young players that plays abroad in Europe, all over. So if you, with the right mindset, the right mentality, you can do something special with the team. But also when I spoke to the Federation, Deputy President Mariga spoke with my agent and told him that, they are very interested, and it's always nice to know that you in your life every day, you go out to convince people that why you a good coach, why you the right man for the job. So you always, and with Kenya was a opportunity where there was a lot of respect from the federation side.
Elsewhere, Julian Timber says that Arsenal can change the narrative of their season if they beat PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League last 16 tie tonight. The Gunners have suffered injuries to several of their key attackers, with Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus ruled out for the season, while Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli have hamstring injuries to keep them on the sidelines. Arsenal have failed to score in their last two matches and fallen 13 points behind leaders Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. However, they were one of the standout sides in the Champions League group phase, finishing third on 19 points and only conceding 3 goals. Here's manager Mikel Arteta on how he analyzes his opponents, and this sound is courtesy of Sky Sports.
I think the results vary in football. What I'm more interested is how they behave, what they play, why they do certain things, and what we expect them to do against us, and what are the weaknesses to try to beat them.
Yeah, you met each other last season as well. Is it a different situation right now, or is it a bit of the same?
Every situation is different. You know, a year in football is
What are the difference right now?
It's a long time, and the context has changed. They have other players as well. We have other players as well. Momentums are different. We played a competition in that moment where we were already qualified. They weren't, and now it's a tie that's going to decide who is through. So it is very different.
In the meantime, Liverpool manager Arne Slot says that his side have nothing to fear at the Parc des Princes as he prepares his Premier League title favourites for a blockbuster Champions League clash away to Paris Saint-Germain. Slot's side take the next step in their bid for a first Champions League crown since 2019 when they face PSG in the last 16 first leg tomorrow. The 6-time European champions lost on both their previous visits to PSG in 1997 and 2018, but Liverpool have been beaten just 4 times in all competitions this season and only once in the Champions League, so they're hoping they continue with their winning ways one way or the other. In cricket, Australia were bowled out for 264 after 49 overs by India earlier in the first Champions Trophy semi-final. Skipper Steve Smith and Alex Carey hit half centuries. Smith hit 73 and Carey smashed 61 to put on the highest total at the Dubai International Cricket Stadium in the ongoing 50-over tournament. And India pace spearhead Mohammad Shami stood out with figures of 3 for 48. In terms of India, they're currently sitting on 43 for 2 after 8 overs. Then in rugby, Sharks loose head Ntutuko Mqunu is set to join the Stormers at the end of the current season. The 25-year-old has been earmarked as one of the rising stars of South African rugby and will be looking to take the next step in his career in Cape Town. He will add to the depth in the Stormers front row and compete with the likes of Ali Vermaak and Steve Sotole and Vernon Matongo for the number 1 jersey next season. Finally, in motorsport, Mercedes rookie Formula 1 driver Andrea Kimi Antonelli has slammed the idea that he is a replacement at the team for Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes chose Antonelli to make his debut this season after Hamilton informed them of his desire to move to Ferrari for 2025 before last season had even started. But Antonelli's point here, he's basically saying that he wants to make his own mark in F1. He joined Mercedes' youth program at the age of 11 and was promoted to F1 after just 1 season in Formula 2. And it'll be interesting to see how he's going to perform for Mercedes this year in the F1. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now.
So I understand that Benny McCarthy and his appointment as the coach of Kenya will earn more money than the president of Kenya. Yeah? What does that tell you?
Interesting. That's how much they have faith in him. And
No,
they see
that tells you how important that position is compared to being the president of the country. That's his challenge. More sport in an hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound in Crown has delays towards Main Reef Road. In central Johannesburg, the M2 eastbound is slow moving towards Heidelberg Road, and the M1 southbound slow moving towards Crown Interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound in Amanzimtoti has a crash reported near the Adams Road exit. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 westbound in Hillcrest has a stationary truck reported at Key Ridge. In Northwest, on the N4 in Zeerust, protesting reported at Leherutse, and the road is closed. In Cape Town, Plain Street is closed opposite the National Parliament building. On Christian Barnard Street, a police incident reported near the station deck taxi rank. You're asked to expect delays and diversions. The M3 southbound is queuing towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Kubik interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? With Specsavers buy one get one offer, you get great value for money. You know you can trust us with over 350 stores nationwide. Get a free pair of branded prescription sunglasses up to 3,200 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye test and spectacle frame with lenses on your first pair. Choose from top brands like Police, Hugo, Tommy Hilfiger, Carolina Herrera and more. There really is no reason to go anywhere else. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
Meet TJ, the magician. Well, he isn't quite the magician, but shame, let's call him that. The other day he tried to do that coin ear trick. Poor Owami is still in the hospital with a 5 Rand coin stuck in his ear. He tried getting his pit bull, Mufasa, to levitate. Oh, he got that right. But now Mufasa is levitating through Tembisa, and somehow TJ forgot to read the section on how to get Mufasa back down. It's tough being a magician, but luckily for TJ, Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician will be the perfect inspiration for him to be the best magician in Tembisa. Catch Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Equality, human dignity, freedom of movement and residence. Life, everyone has the right to life. Human Rights Month on SAFM. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we'll be chatting to Bruce Whitfield. You know, he's the business journalist, business reporter, business speaker, about his book called The One Thing. And it is your business, I would think, if The One Thing is about how to make South Africa better than what it is right now. So we'll join him imminently. Let me just do this. Before we do that, we've had some comments from people about the JMPD police officers who are trying to say, come on, forget the coke now. We need you to send me a money transfer of sorts, or put the money in my wallet, right? Let's get for the comment. Let's see if we can sort that out with keys, if we can play one or two comments, right?
Good afternoon, Dr. Ashraf. Dr. Ashraf, it's not just the government officials or the JMPD, the Metro Police, or your SAPS members who are soliciting money from their citizens. Even the employers, they are finding ways of getting money from their employees just by deducting unexplainable deductions from your salary. Now, as a truck driver, if you get a tire bust, they will charge you that tire 12,000 Rand. It's either you leave the job or they will deduct.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. You see, on the issue of traffic fines, Ashraf, sometimes we are tempted to do it to give them money because, Ashraf, we are surviving only little. We are trying, we are hustling to make ends meet. So some of us, these vehicles, we are using them to make money to put food on your table. So we can't even maintain them to standard. So at the end of the day, I would rather pay that 50 Rand than getting a fine of 500 Rand because I am even failing to buy a brand new tires. I am relying on buying second-hand tires because I can't manage to buy new. So there's no choice. Some of us, we are being forced into that situation. Thanks.
All right. Well, I certainly can't comment about being forced into those situations, but it does to a degree, not to a degree, obviously it does. It does reflect in many ways the psyche of our nation and what we do and what we do when we're in trouble and how do we get out of trouble and whether we can afford it or whether we can't afford it, what is we do. The other one, besides the traffic fines, issues of the employer-employee situation is a big deal, I would think, and maybe something we need to talk more about. If you're saying, as the truck driver said, that's happened, as it happened to you, let me know. Right. Okay, let's move on to another important issue. There's no question about it that, and I speak about this often, that I would love to live in a country that's a champion nation where everything just works, everything, across all sectors of South African society. So that's the dream, that's the wish list. The other thing is we know that we're very much a mid-table nation, and if we don't get it right, we could even go lower than mid-table. So what do we do? Now, in the context of all of that and the problems we've experienced in the last few weeks around some of the biggest challenges, not just in South Africa, but the impact of other decision makers around our country. The conversation now with Bruce Whitfield, I think, is particularly important. Bruce Whitfield, you may know, is a financial journalist, business broadcaster, reporter, and speaker. But in this case, he's the author of a book called The One Thing: Small Ideas, Big Outcomes, A Brighter Future for South Africa. And the key word here is a brighter future for South Africa. So, Bruce, good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, good to talk to you as well. It was probably about 12 months ago, and I've got about almost the same sort of hairstyle as you. And I was in a barber shop in Cape Town having my hair cut, and suddenly said to the barber, "Stop, stop, stop." And he said, what? He thought he'd cut my ear off or something. And I said, "No, I've just had an idea." And I turned to him and I said, "If you were president for just half an hour and you could do one thing to improve the future, what would that one thing be?" And he said to me, "I'd solve crime." And I said, "Thank you." And we chatted a bit, and that precipitated a process whereby I got more than 100 of the best leaders I know in South Africa to contribute 500 words each to a book called The One Thing. If you were president for just half an hour and you could do one thing to fix the future, what would it be? And we got some fabulous ideas.
Well, there you are. You've certainly set it up, and I hope the barber didn't say that's a bit of a close shave when you spoke about crime issues anyway, right? Okay, so it's come out of that. I think the book was published around November, December, if I'm not mistaken, right? Who did you ask? I mean, these 100-plus leaders. I know I'm one of them, rather privileged, I should say that. But give me some other names, and then maybe we'll talk about some of the things some of them have said.
There's so many people. I mean, these, again, are people in my phone book. And I went through my WhatsApps and I just went, yep, that one will do, that one will do, that one will do. People as diverse as yourself, Katlego Mapai, the founder of Yoko, Adrian Gore, the chief executive at Discovery, Sim Chabalala, the CEO at Standard Bank, got the now you're testing me. You see, the director of the Ndlovu Youth Choir made a contribution as well. There's a wonderfully diverse group of people in business leadership, in society. And I avoided politicians altogether because politicians have had long enough to fix this problem, and they've not dealt with it effectively. And so I approached people I know to be problem solvers, people who have the best intentions for the future of South Africa, but sort of engraved into their bones, and people who would think really deeply about the multitude of problems that South Africa faces, and also would be willing to come up with just one thing. Because you say to anybody in any leadership position, I restrict you to do only one thing, and it freaks them out because there are so many things that have to be done to put South Africa on a path. But by forcing people to focus in on just one thing, got them to dig really deeply to figure out what was the one small thing that could have the biggest multiplier effect to improve the future. And it was a really fulfilling project.
Well, absolutely. And of course, I mean, what I did, by the way, is look at the people that I was familiar with, that I'd known personally in your book. And I'm very privileged because it goes back to saying, hold it, you and I, as broadcasters, we're very privileged because we have this ability to interact with people on a national, if not national, even global scale. So
people return our phone calls.
Well, they absolutely do. Of course,
that's the access. And you, if we don't use our access for good, what are we doing with it? And I think that's what's so important.
Okay, maybe that's the most significant point. I'll come back to that in a moment. I noticed the one person who didn't meet your deadline is the chairperson of Eskom, which means he was rather too busy. Mteto Nyati was rather too busy keeping the lights on. So maybe he was doing his one good thing anyway, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And I mean, Mteto Nyati was a really good sport. And when I approached him as the book was being published, I said to him, look, I asked you, you promised to deliver. I asked you again, you promised to deliver. I didn't want to harass you again. But now that, at that point, it was the 1st of October and South Africa had no load shedding for 6 months, I said, if things are stable and you can afford 2 hours of your evening, come to me to the book launch. And Mteto Nyati very graciously agreed to come to the book launch, where usually these book launches, you know what they're like. It's so quite self-congratulatory, and you've got an author who has a tame interviewer telling them they're wonderful and the book is wonderful, and you have this lovely conversation. And this time I turned it on its head, and not even the publishers knew what to expect, because I then said to Mteto Nyati, right, now tonight we're going to find out what was your one thing to change the dynamic of Eskom, because for Eskom, for 16 years, we came to believe that Eskom was entirely unfixable. People within Eskom believed it was unfixable. And eventually, I managed to corral Mteto Nyati, who is a very smart operator. And I got him down to one basic thing, and that was, if you keep telling people that they're stupid, they will never disappoint you. And I just found that such a wonderful view to have of somebody who is an engineer, who, when the president asked him to be chief executive, declined but agreed to be the chairman, provided he could appoint an engineering-heavy board. And until the middle of January, South Africa avoided load shedding. And then, because of the legacies of Eskom and the underinvestment and all of the things we know about so well, things came apart, and then again, quite badly, 10 days ago, once again. And it's a stark reminder of how quickly things fall apart in a country when you neglect them, when you don't pay attention to the detail. But at the same time, it is also a reminder that the right people in the right job, doing the right things with the right incentives in place, are able to do what we think is impossible. And we did think it was impossible to have no load shedding for nearly a year. I'm not celebrating the fact that I wouldn't want to, it should be normal that we have no load shedding, but at the same time, it is extraordinary that you get the right people doing the right things, and you can fix almost any problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. When I come up next with you in a moment, I want to talk about maybe some key points that's emerged, because that really is the true state of the nation. We ask people, what's your one thing? Their one thing reflects what they see as the number one problem and how they see it should be solved. That comes up next.
It's time to shine for young athletes across South Africa. From thrilling football and rugby matches to intense netball games. Experience the passion and prowess of Mzansi's finest young sports stars. SuperSport Schools and SABC Plus bring you the specially curated channel dedicated entirely to school and youth sports. Join us as we celebrate their achievements and bring the excitement right to your screens. This is your chance to support the future of South African sports. The SuperSport Schools channel on SABC Plus, where every game is a home game. Don't miss a moment. Download the SABC Plus app today. Available on iOS, Google, and Smart TV. Or visit sabc-plus.com to start streaming. SuperSport Schools on SABC Plus. All the sport you care about most. Now streaming wherever you are.
Get unbeatable football odds with SuperSport Bet. From derbies to title deciders, our Super Boosts give you boosted odds you won't find anywhere else. Switch today and get 100% deposit match up to 5,000 Rand. SuperSport Bet is licensed by the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. Bookmaker license 101911097. No persons under the age of 18 are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. National Responsible Gambling Program toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help 076 675 0710.
Dr. Nikki Alexander, Dr. Thomas Chamberlain, and Dr. Jack Hodgson form a dedicated team of forensic pathologists who try to work out how and why the victim died. This series sees Nikki investigate a murder that's a carbon copy of a case from her past. She soon suspects that the killings are personal to her. But who will believe her? Meanwhile, Jack creates tension when he finds himself aligned with a police complaints investigator over the accidental shooting of a girl by armed police. And a seemingly random killing in the remote countrysides leads Nikki and Jack into the dangerous underbelly of a criminal world. This is Silent Witness, Thursdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. Starts 20 February only on S3. Open up.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, chatting to Bruce Whitfield about his book, The One Thing. In fact, you could say it's about our book, because so many business leaders and other leaders, activists of sort, around the country have contributed to this book, The One Thing. So, Bruce, I get your point that you made earlier on about, you and I and others being in positions of privilege where people will return our calls, and what do we do about that? And you clearly saying we need to do something for the better for South Africa. So I'm not expecting you to go through all 100. People must buy the book, right? But perhaps maybe mention 3 or 4 that really stood out for you in terms of the one thing that these leaders suggested they would do if they were the president for an hour.
Just on the point of our book, so Wayne Divenhage at Outer came to the book launch as well, and he posted a comment on social media saying, "Oh, this is Bruce Whitfield's new book. Cheeky blighter didn't even write it himself. I was the orchestrator. I was the organizer. I got everybody together to share their big ideas." So somebody like Nikki Newton-King, for example, the former chief executive of JSE Limited, when I confronted her with this problem, and she's a lawyer by training, and you know that lawyers can be quite chatarach by their very nature. She said, it can't be one thing. I said, it has to be one thing. Try harder. And she came back and she said, you know what? It's so much better to have just one thing that works than big ideas that die in conference rooms. And every day people have big ideas. Any fool can identify the problems South Africa faces, but it takes true brilliance to begin to address it. Somebody like Sim Chabalala, for example, says something that many people will find unpopular, because particularly with the budget and the mess that we're in, with the attempt at the VAT increase, all of that sort of stuff, we've got a real issue on government spending. So the logical thing there is to cut the public service. But Sim Chabalala says we just need a highly effective and efficient public service, because you cannot have any functioning country in the world that doesn't have an efficient and high-functioning public service. Others, for example, talk about the need to create industries in South Africa. No country has ever elevated itself into the upper echelons of world economics without having a strong manufacturing base. And we've killed our manufacturing base, partly through poor policy, partly as a result of no electricity. And it's been a really difficult environment for factories to operate and for entry-level jobs to be created. So this idea that we need to be creating an environment in which businesses can thrive is an absolutely critical one, because without businesses, there are no jobs. And we need to turn the conversation around job creation into business creation, because the moment you create businesses, that creates the environment in which jobs can be created. You don't just make jobs out of thin air. And then my favorite one, and I'm very biased on this one, because as I was putting the book to bed, I went down to Gqeberha and spent a weekend with my brother. I said, show me what you're up to. And he's one of these community activists. And he basically, with a group of homeless guys from a homeless shelter, were cleaning up Central in downtown Gqeberha and cleaning up St. George's Park so that there could be park runs there, so that the community that lives in that area can start to use their park once again. And that level of community activism, we often say that I'm insignificant. What difference can I make? But each one of us can make a difference. And there's this wonderful old West African proverb that says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, you've never been stuck in a room with a mosquito at 2 o'clock in the morning. And my brother is one of those people who will not take no for an answer and has become an activist in his community by doing small things each and every single day to improve his community, and that builds on itself.
Well, you're right. I think about Rihanna Musaji, who's not in the book, okay, but she's called herself the Barefoot Facilitator, and she has transformed the Joe Slovo informal settlement near Crosby, sort of close to Mayfair. Obviously roping in other people, but it's completely transformed in terms of what they do. They've got Wi-Fi, they've got a whole lot of things, and you just can't believe it. So your point is taken, right? We've got about a minute and a half to go, right? Let me put this to you then, right? One thing is we all have great ideas. I've suggested a seat at the table because it's something I feel strongly about. We need to create a table big enough for 60 million people, so opportunity and access is important. But have you then picked others' brains to say, what are you going to do about your great one thing? Or is it simply going to be in the book?
So the book is the first step. And what I'm loving, and this is where when I'm getting contacted by companies and saying, please come and help us find our one thing. So this is companies, they've got a commercial incentive to do it. I want people to think, what is my one thing? What is one thing I can do? Is it a behavioral change? Do I read to children at break times? What can I do to make the world better? And it starts a revolution. It starts the butterfly effect, this idea that I can do one small thing, maybe for half an hour a week, and I can have a positive impact on other people's lives. I'm not a big one for quoting trade unions, but the concept of each one teach one from the 1980s is one that we need to reinvigorate in our country each and every single day. And I do believe that individuals can have an impact. I do believe that companies can have an impact. I do believe that, dare I say it, even politicians, if they applied themselves.
Well,
could have an impact.
I'm very keen to execute my one thing. Right, in 30 seconds, what is your one thing?
No, I can't say it. We'll both be taken to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. It's a behavioral change, Ashraf. It's a behavioral change. And it's how we treat each other. It's about Ubuntu, but it's much more rudely put than that to get attention. It is the last chapter of the book. And basically it says, don't be a bad person, be a good person. But I use a shorter word for that. But anyway,
somehow
yes,
I feel
be good to other people and we'll all be fine.
And I think somehow myself, yourself, and everybody listening feels a little bit better about themselves and about South Africa right now. So that's been great. Bruce Whitfield, great chatting to you. And of course, the book is available, The One Thing, from all stores, not just the good bookstores. I think just anywhere you can go. Bruce Whitfield.
In bad bookstores too.
Well, that's my point anyway, right? We can think good about bad as well. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. Your top stories at this hour. Minister commits to housing people closer to work, and African countries urged to invest in energy. Good afternoon. With the news at 4, I am Chanduko Ligenge. Human Settlements Minister Thembi Smelane says they are committed to housing people closer to their workplaces. Smelane was speaking in Midrand, north of Johannesburg, at the launch of the Grand Central Social Housing Project. The initiative is part of government's efforts to provide affordable rental housing in urban areas, allowing people to live closer to their places of work. Smelane says despite their limited budget, they will deliver on their mandate.
In the 400 or so million that was spent here, around 280 something, I think, comes from the Department of Human Settlements. So we may not be getting at that scale continuously for all the years to come, but we'll try to maintain that. But for us,
Minister of Energy Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says the African continent needs to design an effective and investment method in order to have a sustainable future energy mix. Ramokgopa officially opened the annual 3-day Africa Energy Indaba in Cape Town. Captains of industry from across the African continent have gathered to deliberate on energy-related matters. Ramokgopa says investment in energy in the African continent should be made a priority.
So it's going to require a significant amount of investment. So you can see that the transversal or the common thread here is about investment. How do we design those investments that are going to help us to achieve the kind of ambition that we have set ourselves?
The Border Management Authority says water levels have risen at its Stokbord and Groblersdal Bridge ports of entry in Limpopo. This follows yesterday's temporary suspensions of operations at 5 ports of entry due to flooding. BMA Deputy Assistant Commissioner Peter Mpilo says operations remain suspended at Stokbord, Bray, Groblersdal Bridge and Point Drift.
The situation is as it was yesterday. However, it is just the level, or rather the severity of the water level at Groblersdal Bridge and Stokbord. It has increased from where it was yesterday to today, and we are continuously monitoring the situation. We will not be in the position to formulate an opinion of the extent of the damages because we have to wait for the water to subside so that we can then conduct thorough assessment.
Advocate Zola Majavu has questioned why the Zanzu nightclub matter was not reported at the time it occurred. Majavu is the legal representative of one of the nightclub's directors, Neo Mwela. He addressed the media in Johannesburg today. A video has since gone viral showing men being physically and sexually assaulted at the Pretoria nightclub. Mwela claims he only became aware of the torture incident through social media recently. Advocate Majavu elaborates.
How is it that an incident that is 3 years old only came to the director's knowledge when it did to everyone else? there was no knowledge that the victims had reported that incident as far back as when it happened. If they did, that knowledge does not repose in his mind.
Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar says although Israel is ready to continue the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal, there needs to be an agreement on the release of hostages held by Hamas to extend the framework. This comes after the first part of the deal took into effect on the 19th of January, with 33 Israeli hostages and 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees being released. Bunolo Maribe has more.
In a press conference in Jerusalem, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar says that in order for the second phase of the ceasefire deal to be implemented, Israel demands a total demobilization of the Gaza Strip. Saar says that Hamas is using the aid meant for humanitarian purposes to generate money to continue its war against Israel. Meanwhile, Hamas says that it wants to move ahead to the second stage of negotiations, opening the way to a permanent end to the war. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Recapping on the top story at this hour, Human Settlements Minister Thembi Smelani says they are committed to housing people closer to their workplaces. For SAFM News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Linda called in as cover for Proteas at Champions Trophy, and the era of open ticket starts in the Kaizer Chiefs versus Magezi FC game. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is queuing through Crown Interchange towards Boysons. The M2 eastbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Heidelberg Road. In KZN, the N2 southbound in Amanzimtoti has a crash reported near the Adams Road exit. The N2 southbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. On the N3 westbound in Hillcrest, a stationary truck reported at Key Ridge, and on the N3 westbound, queuing traffic reported towards Spaghetti Junction. In the northwest, on the N4 in Zeerust, protesting reported at Loharuche, and the road is closed. In Cape Town, the M3 northbound queuing at Paradise Road, the M5 southbound is queuing towards Racecourse Road exit, the N2 outbound has a stationary bus reported before the N7 Jakes Haville Drive, and the N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Bombela. Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does every electrical company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Dr. Malava, you are a genius, man.
Dr. Malava speaking. How can I soothe your heart today?
Hey, Doc. My Bezo says I'm not romantic enough, and with Valentine's Day coming up, I want to brush up on my romantic talk.
Ah, Uncle Mo, I've got you covered. Or better yet, I'll have you improve on your game and have you all set.
Oh, Doc, what are you saying now?
Grab a tennis racket, a bottle of water, and some fresh green fluffy tennis balls, Malume.
Tennis racket, tennis balls. How is that supposed to help?
In the arena, Serena Williams will have you saying 15 love, 30 love, 40 love. It's love everywhere, Malume. Catch in the arena. Serena Williams, Sundays at 7 p.m. starts 9 February only on S3.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So I've had reaction from people talking about, me saying Benny McCarthy earns more money than the Kenyan president. Fine. What about other reaction? Further comments, and there's many wanting to talk about bribery and the JMPD and that sort of thing. So further comments from you. Have you ever been, asked for a bribe by a police officer, traffic officer in the main, and said yes or said no, or the other way around? You were not asked, but you effectively pushed that to get yourself out of trouble. I'd like to know. You can remain anonymous if that's the way you want to do it. Further comments on the protests, widespread protests in Kenya, in refugee camps. They have no food, they have no money. They have no food, they have no water. They obviously have no money too. And now there's been further cut with the US aid cut in that region. And then that conversation with Bruce Whitfield about the one thing. All of those available, as you know, as a podcast. You can check it out, safm.co.za. Right, let's get into another issue that is just so important, right? We have with us Kone Mulder, who's the newly elected leader of the Freedom Front Plus. Kone Mulder, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse. Do we have you there? Maybe not. Let's just try and reconnect that in a minute. While we do that, let's get further comments, yes, about some of the issues of the police.
On the issue of JMPD, let me tell you, Ashraf, all of South African law enforcement is corrupt. I will tell you something very close to my heart. Those people in this police station, nearest police station, they took bribes in order to sit on the case of the murder of my brother. So I will tell you now, I hate cops passionately, because they know the truth. They took some money. Through my own investigations, I've established that. If you need evidence, I can give it to you. So I hate cops passionately, because that's all they know, these corrupt things. Yes. Zolethu speaks in Bombela currently, Emalahleni.
Or maybe that evidence is what you need to send us to. Just call in. Let Keys take down your details. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's get to the issue then of the Freedom Front being very critical in this case here about the Hawks' decision to investigate charges of high treason against AfriForum. You know, we spoke about this yesterday with the guys from Sanco. They laid a charge. I know that already. So with me now is the newly elected leader of the Freedom Front Plus, because Peter Groenewald is not the leader any longer. We have now Kone Mulder. Appreciate your time. And first things first, well done. Congratulations on the new position.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. I really appreciate that, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in your discussion.
Suppose, you're taking up this position. I'm not that you're new to Freedom Front Plus, not at all, right? But it comes up at a time of critical thought leader conversations that we're all having, and action that needs not be taken about many issues in the country. So you're very much in the furnace here, right?
Yes, it's like a rough time at the moment, because that's typical of politics. At the one moment everything is calm, and the next moment it's a raging storm. And I think we are in a raging storm at this stage. It all started off earlier this year when President Trump of the United States issued that executive order. And it's got all kinds of implications. And I think South Africans will react differently to what is happening in that instance. But from my perspective, luckily I've had some experience in the past. I've been around for quite a while, and I've got some views on behalf of our party as well.
Okay, so give me then your position. So we know that AfriForum, which is not a political party, as well as Solidarity or Solidariteits, right, have made submissions to various think tanks or lobby groups in the USA, right? And then we know subsequently there's been a call, not just about every day on the show, say yes, they need to be charged for treason, right? What's your position?
Yes, it's the first time, I think, since 1994 that anybody wants to charge anybody with treason. Treason is a very serious crime, and it's not something that one should take very lightly. The fact of the matter is that what AfriForum and Solidarity did, as far as I understand, is they have a case that they thought they would need to bring to the attention of some lobby groups or some groups of interest, and even also the United States government. It's not clear at this stage to whom exactly they spoke and who did they not speak to. I think that will become known at a later stage. But the important thing is, if you look at the definition of treason is when somebody wants to take certain steps to overthrow the government or to try and assassinate the sovereign, if it's a monarchy or that kind of thing. That is treason. And it's debatable. I don't believe it's treason what they've done. If you look at the message that they've taken abroad, and specifically when they made it very clear that they want to appeal to the United States government not to bring any sanctions against South Africa that will be to the detriment of South Africa or its citizens. And I don't think that could ever be treason in any way.
Okay, now, we can debate the issue of treason all day long. You're right. Some may say it includes also undermining a country, and maybe this action sort of undermines South Africa anyway, right? But more importantly, from a legal perspective, you are particularly, voicing your disappointment towards the Hawks because they're considering whether they need to take this case further, right? What do you want to tell them?
Well, I understand from the Hawks' position the following. Charges were laid by certain parties. They have not made it public which parties.
Well, Sanco, I know. I can just tell you because
okay.
The civic organization.
I agree. Okay, fine. So we know it's Sanco. We also took note that MK went to the police station about a week or so ago. You're down in Cape Town to lay charges, so they must be one. There may be others. Now, technically, in terms of the law, basically, when charges are laid, the police need to investigate. We see that every day happening. Mm-hmm. What makes it a bit different here is that quite often charges are laid and nothing happens whatsoever after that. You don't get any feedback. You don't get any response whatsoever. What's interesting here is that there's immediate public action by the Hawks to announce that they are now investigating these things. That, I think, is something out of the ordinary because they normally don't do that. And our response is to that situation where the Hawks have now decided to investigate these things. I hope they can conclude the investigations. They should have done so already because there's nothing to investigate as far as I'm concerned.
Well, interesting. We got a legal opinion yesterday on the show, and the person we spoke to made the point that it may be very, very difficult, as you've said, to actually get a conviction, if I can call it that, on the basis of treason. For many of the reasons you mentioned, it's easy to say someone did this or someone did that. You have to be absolutely clear about that. And there's been further comments about that too, right? So let that take its course. Are you suggesting that the Hawks going public with this are trying to create a spectacle out of it too?
It looks like it because I think when was the last time that we quickly heard and saw a response from the Hawks? Normally they work in quiet behind the scenes. Nobody knows exactly what they're doing. And obviously they're doing excellent work from time to time. We all know that. But it's a little bit strange that this time they came out immediately. It could be political pressure, etc., to be applied. I don't think it's to the interest of the government that it's been seen that they are doing, that the Hawks are investigating in such a manner. But as you correctly point out, let the law take its course, let them conclude the investigation. And obviously, if they decide to press charges, after forum, everybody will defend themselves. And it will be a spectacle with ending up very badly for the government again.
Okay. Interesting, as part of your own feedback, you then shift sideways and are more critical of the African National Congress. What are you saying about them?
Well, I was using the example in a statement to say that if you want to go down the road of trying to start to charge each other with treason, then maybe then ask the Hawks to investigate other forms of possibly things that were not done in the best interest of the country. And I have specifically referred to some of the findings of the Zondo Commission, which clearly indicated and pointed the finger to certain individuals and certain political parties and certain actions and said this is a huge problem for South Africa. And if one argues that things have been done that could be to the detriment of the country, I would argue that the whole question of state capture, and we know when this happened and under whose governance it happened, could also then perhaps be on the same level if you really want to go that route. I was making the point that if you want to start charging each other with those kind of things, let's look at alternatives as well.
What about, we can discuss the legalese about this all day long, and I don't think that's really the intention. What you want is you want to fix, right? How do we fix the situation where, on the one hand, the American president, Donald Trump, based upon feedback or information he's received, has been very, very clear. Lots of people doing very, very bad things in the country and then talking about sanctions. And I think AfriForum, as you quite rightly have pointed out, understood the gravity of that as well. And then to say, actually, we don't want sanctions and we don't want to leave the country anyway, right? Meaning, if I go back to the 1990 example in the negotiations, ultimately we may argue and debate at length, but we understand we have a vested interest in wanting to build the country together. So based upon what we have right now and what has played out in the last month, right? How do we do that?
I think we should perhaps try to cool the temperature on all sides. I think that there are lots of people that do not really assist. And the reality is that, as you correctly point out, we need to get around the table. We need to get some interactions. It doesn't have to be in public. where people can talk about these things and find solutions. And AfriForum made it very clear, and he from the Freedom Front Plus was a point of view also wants to make it very clear that we are committed to South Africa. We are South Africans. We don't intend to go anywhere else. We want to stay and have a prosperous future here with all our fellow countrymen. But then we need to discuss and see how we take these things further. The reality is, I'm wondering whether the actions announced by President Trump was based on specific information with regard to expropriation or anything in that vein. I think there's a much bigger thing at play here, and that refers to maybe South Africa's international positioning in international arena in terms of policy and all those kind of things. That is something completely different. But in the end, when everything's being said and done, it will remain to us as South Africans to find a way forward. And I think it can be done with good, calm heads and good leadership on all sides. We are prepared to interact and discuss these things with, and I think we are very well positioned. Being in Parliament, being a political party, but also have good contacts with NGOs and other organizations outside of the political sphere. I think we can play a role in that, and we are prepared to do so.
Okay, so why has that not happened already?
That's a good question. I think, I'm not sure exactly why. I think there are maybe a knee-jerk reaction from the current government. And I think we must understand that we live in a democracy. In a democracy, people have freedom of speech. People have passports. They can travel internationally. And we should tolerate the fact that people have different views. And I think once we accept that, then we understand what is happening. People have a cause. They believe in a cause. And they think it's important to internationalize that. Why would anybody want to go and internationalize a cause if it's addressed locally? If its concerns are addressed locally by the governing party or the government itself, and remember now, we now have a government of national unity, and this is a wonderful opportunity for the government of national unity to sit down and say, let's talk, let's find solutions, combine South African unique solutions, and then we go forward. And I don't think for 1 second that any of the people that are upset or want to go to internationalize things will not be available or will not be happy to participate in that kind of approach.
Well, I mean, you raise an interesting point because, many have given examples of the African National Congress, amongst others, maybe the PAC too, but let's say the ANC, who also lobbied worldwide, but the big point of departure was they lobbied because they couldn't have a discussion with the local nationalist party. There was a difference.
Yes.
In this case here, AfriForum and whoever else, right, even the Freedom Front Plus, if you just gruntled, you could have had that one-on-one meeting. But do you get a sense that that people like AfriForum, do you get a sense that they are disgruntled, that they feel they are not being heard on the one hand? On the other hand, if I sort of loosely quote Prof. Thuli Madonsela, the former public protector, in the conversations over the weekend, that Afrikaners must also understand that they need to, and I'm paraphrasing, they need to move away from where they were and their privileged position then, and understand they just one of a whole lot of other people who are citizens of the country and nothing more special.
No, the public protector should understand the circumstances. She clearly doesn't understand it at all. Afrikaners have not asked for any specific privileges or any specific wonderful treatment. They have not asked that. We've been in South Africa for centuries, and we have been part and parcel of this country since 1994. No special attention is asked for. But maybe we should sit down and listen to what the Afrikaner community is saying in terms of things that they experience on a daily basis. And maybe others who do not understand that, maybe they should just listen for a second and try to hear what this community are basically saying. And I think that can be done. As you correctly pointed out, the ANC, when they started their campaign many years ago, did exactly as you correctly say. They thought they could not be heard and they were not listened to. We shouldn't go the same route and make the same mistake 50 years later. We can avoid that with responsible leadership from all sides and sit down and let's listen to each other and find a way forward. We've done that in the past.
Okay, so to go back then to what I raised earlier on, what can then you do in your position as a member of Parliament, as a leader of the Freedom Front Plus, and as a person who's a former leader, effectively is a cabinet minister, so very much part of the GNU? What can you do to escalate the meeting up of people, which is very much a Mandela-esque way of doing things?
Yes, I think we need to play a role if we are allowed to do so, and I think we may be allowed to do so. We are part of the government of national unity. I'm convinced that the President is serious in taking the government of national unity forward in the best interest of South Africa. At the moment, the focus is a little bit diverted with regard to the budget, and I think we are making progress in the budget. I think we will be in a position to pass a budget on the 12th, not pass a budget, to have the budget heard by the Minister of Finance and then discuss and pass at a later stage. So that is where the attention at the moment is. But in the meantime, I think we should open the necessary channels to get people to sit down and talk. And obviously, it's always better to have these kind of discussions, not in public, in front of the media, etc. Because sometimes people then want to grandstand and make a public spectacle of things. That's not in the interest of anybody else. And what we want in the end is we also want for everybody else, all of us, all want a prosperous and a peaceful future where we can understand each other, work together, and take our country forward. That's what our children want us more.
I think you're right. I mean, as a media person myself, I think having seen Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as well as Zelensky in full view of the media arguing like kids, spoiled brats on a playground is not the way we want to have things in our country.
Exactly.
Here's the last thing. Peter Groenewald now has resigned as the leader, right? I see lots of people have suggested, I know he's given his reasons that it's going to be a busy year and he wants young people. Has he not resigned because he's part of the GNU and he retains that position because now his political views differ slightly from the Freedom Front Plus, particularly around what has happened?
No, definitely not. I can assure you that has played no role whatsoever at all. What basically happened was that in the party, every 3 years we do have an elective conference where we elect the new leadership of the party top to bottom. And what happened was Dr. Groenewald indicated at that meeting that he was not going to be available again to be elected, and then we elected the new leadership. There was no resignation in that sense at all. And I can assure you there's no difference of opinion at all. He's playing his role within the government of national unity. I am the leader of the party, taking the party forward, but there's no difference of opinion whatsoever at this stage, and there will not be.
Okay, that's where we can leave it, Corné Mulder, newly elected leader of the Freedom Front Plus, and maybe, just maybe, part of that group of people who will have a seat at the table trying to solve things in South Africa ASAP.
This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us. Because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, things develop. There's so many things happening as the minutes progress here on the show every single day in South Africa. That's why I think when we say the national pulse, it's like absolutely the pulse rate's racing. Let's talk about the Zanzu nightclub, right? Now, the Zanzu nightclub's director is Neo Moyela, and he's denied, allegations of torture and a whole lot of other things. Now, this comes after we saw videos, right, which surfaced showing men being tortured at the Pretoria club, that's Zanzu, and a person connected to the establishment has finally come out into the open. Now, earlier today, the entrepreneur, Neo Moyela, who is the director of Zanzu, appeared alongside their attorney, a well-known attorney, Zola Majabu, in a media briefing to shed some light on what actually happened. So let's pick out some clips that came out of today's media briefing. Firstly, the advocate Zola Majabu talking about his client becoming a person of interest with regard to the investigation.
If at the end of the police investigation he becomes a person of interest, he will cooperate just like any other responsible, corporate and natural citizen of this country. He does not locate himself above the law. He does not locate himself above the law. Thirdly, the incident, when it first broke, an impression was created that it might have been a new incident. We have now come to learn from the fact establishment exercise that he undertook that this incident is approximately just shy over 3 years. He had no knowledge of it. We understand what the law says on both criminal liability as well as civil liability of directors. So we are not here as a PR exercise. I'm a lawyer, not a spin doctor. My role is to make sure that in his urge to speak his truth to power, he does not compromise himself legally. Because he wanted to speak, I'm told, last week. And I suggested that perhaps he should hold off until we've had a consultation, which we did yesterday. And that is why we are coming out to say what we are saying. So some people may think that it's a mop-up exercise. It's fine, everybody is entitled to their views. But what is important is that if he has to account legally, both from a criminal law point of view or from a civil law point of view, there he is. He will subject himself to that. We are not speaking on behalf of anyone who is not seated at the front table. He is not going to speak ill or point fingers at anyone. But what he knows objectively as verifiable facts, he will continue to share with the law enforcement officials.
All right, so here's a question. Why then the need for this media briefing? What is the bottom line around it?
Where are other people who were... Let me finish the thought and I will allow you to try and show you that we're not dealing with someone who's running away or avoiding responsibility. Your responsibility from your point of view is different to the legal responsibility that is still yet to be determined. Now, it will be foolhardy for me as a lawyer to enter that terrain to answer your questions, because they may well determine how the law treats him. But what the intention was is to say, I am here, I haven't left the country, I'm not about to leave the country, the police knows where I am, I engage with the police on my own on 2 occasions without the benefit of a lawyer. If the police call me again tomorrow to say, come, let's see you, the only difference is that he will go there with a lawyer. And if the police believe that they have enough to effect an arrest, we're not saying he shouldn't be arrested, he may not be arrested. It may well be that when he is arrested and he is prosecuted, for example, the question that Pula was asking about state witness will become relevant then. But I can't preempt what is going to happen. It's a premature question because it presupposes someone who's already in the dock, who is offered to be a 204 witness in exchange for giving information, then you are indemnified. We know we're next to that. The police still call on him to say, give us this, give us that. And by the way, we're also looking at this other investigation. Do you have knowledge about information? He shares what he shares. Now, how much should he make available? It is informed by how much he knows. Now, obviously, what is capturing your attention and your imagination is the fact that there are many other cases about this establishment. Now, the chronology of who did what at that particular time then becomes relevant.
Right, let's get to the news headlines. It's 4:30. Here's Chanduko Lekeke.
Thank you, Ashraf. The Road Freight Association has welcomed the marginal decrease in fuel prices this month, noting that it follows months of substantial increases. Minister of Electricity Dr. Hosiyentsho Ramogopa says the African continent needs to design an effective investment method in order to have a sustainable future energy mix. And the Border Management Authority says it is considering moving some ports of entry away from large rivers and dams. More news at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is queuing towards Omonde, the N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards Allendale Road exit, and the N1 northbound in Centurion is slow moving towards Buerta Avenue. In KZN, the N2 southbound in Amanzimtoti has a crash reported near the Adams Road exit. The N3 westbound in Hillcrest has a stationary truck at Key Ridge, and the M19 eastbound in Westville has a crash reported after the Dunkeld Road exit. In the northwest, on the N4 in Zeerust, protesting reported at Lorohutshe. The road is closed. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, the M3 inbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, and the N2 outbound slow moving towards Langa. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Chumi, let's talk. There's a Champions Trophy tournament on the go, right? You got an update about the Proteas, yeah?
Yes, all-rounder George Linda was added to the Proteas Champions Trophy squad as a travelling reserve today, with concerns mounting about the fitness of Aiden Markram. Linda has been in excellent form across all formats this season and threw himself into the spotlight with a player of the match performance against Pakistan in a T20 international in December. His omission from the original squad was criticised, with South Africa's selectors backing Bryce Shamsi, despite Linda being a better batter, while his bowling this season has also been more penetrative. Meanwhile, just to give you an update of that clash between Australia and India, India currently sitting on 134 for 2 after 26 overs. They need 131 runs in 23 overs to win. Remember, Australia posted 264. They were actually bowled out for 264. In the meantime, Pakistan all-rounder Salman Agha has been named as captain of the T20 international team, while Mohammad Rizwan will continue to lead the one-day international side, and Shadab Khan will be Agha's deputy. The Pakistan Cricket Board added as it named squads for 5 T20s and 3 ODIs against New Zealand starting on the 16th of March. Senior batsman Baba Azam was not named, while Rizwan was also left out of the young squad as Pakistan look ahead of the T20 Asia Cup in September and next year's T20 World Cup. Rizwan had only been named skipper of the white ball teams in October. Then in football, some exciting news. We might have a South African playing in the Champions League tonight, Ashraf. It's South African teenager by the name of Chandre Campbell. He plays for Club Brugge, and he's been included in the 22-man squad for the first leg of their last 16 tie against Aston Villa in the UEFA Champions League. Now, Campbell was promoted to the Brugge first team squad in January after impressing with the club's reserve team in the second tier of Belgian football. He joined the club from SuperSport United, and he's basically been making waves from that second tier side. He scored 6 goals and provided 1 assist in 15 matches. Additionally, he has represented Amajita in the under-20 COSAFA Cup. He was actually tipped to be named in the Bafana squad this time around. However, he wasn't. Either way, we're looking forward to seeing if he actually does play for Club Brugge this evening. In the meantime, Kaizer Chiefs head of communications, Vina Maposa, says that it's all systems go for the new open ticket system that will debut in today's Betway Premiership game against Chiefs and Magezi FC. The new ticket vendor for Stadium Management South Africa managed stadiums including FNB Stadium and Orlando Stadium was introduced last Tuesday, and this is because of the unfortunate scenes during the recent Soweto derby of fake tickets and bribery, which led to overcrowding at the FNB Stadium and over 110,000 going through the stadium.
So we hope that this new ticketing system with open tickets will be coming through with secure solutions that will have little delays and causing confusion with our supporters. We're looking forward to implement this system with immediate effect. We've got a match that is coming up on the 4th against Magesi, right here at FNB Stadium. Our supporters will be able to buy tickets for that match.
Elsewhere, Manchester City defender Nathan Ake underwent surgery on a fractured foot yesterday after coming off against Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup at the weekend. The 30-year-old was replaced at half-time on Saturday and now faces another spell on the sidelines. Ake has struggled with a succession of injuries this season and has made only 18 appearances. In netball, Free State Crinums head coach Martha Muswahle Sam says that they look forward to unveiling new talent ahead of their 2025 Telkom Netball League title defense. The Crinums aim to continue where they left off last season, where they clinched their 4th league title. And here's Muswahle Sam just confirming that they have started grooming youngsters to be introduced in the A division as the National League resumes in April.
The team will be introducing new players, of course. Crinums is known for introducing new players every season. And we're very excited this year as we'll be looking for lots and lots of talent new talent, and youngsters who can just, grab the opportunity and run with it, and youngsters who are full of, enthusiasm, youngsters who really want to take this Cranham dress and leave it in a different or in a better place. So we're looking for players who really have a lot of resilience, a lot of grit, and players who know what it takes to become a Cranham. And we definitely do have such new youngsters in the team.
On that note, is a wrap from my side for now. Ashraf, I just gave you a reason to watch Champions League tonight around 7:45.
Well, absolutely. Here's a question to you. And I coughed before I said so. Who was the last South African player to play Champions League football?
It's Percy Tau.
And he played for that same Belgian club, right?
He did. He played for the same Belgian
Was
club.
it the same club? Yeah.
I guess the other question is, who was the last South African to win the Champions League?
No, who was the only South African to win it?
Only South African.
He's the
That's
coach.
the word.
He's the coach of the Kenyan national team.
Yeah.
That must
Only.
change, by the way.
It should.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Mokopane.
It was fast, easy, and he gave me the best quote. My savings is 644 rand. Come join our insurance and save some money.
Nice one, Lebo. Saving 644 Rand a month on your 2019 Mazda CX-3 would also make you so happy you might drop a beat. Outsurance clients know what it feels like to be on the winning side. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Switch and save today. Outsurance is always looking for ways to save you money. They are also committed to settling valid claims fairly and quickly. No hassles.
You know your claim is going to be taken care of and you've got support along the journey.
SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
This business feature is sponsored by CFI, an authorized financial services provider, a global leader in online trading now available in South Africa. Visit cfi.trade today.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And let's get those numbers with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good to connect with you, Makwe. Right, we've got local and global markets in a moment, but Nedbank has got their yearly results. Tell us about that.
Yeah, afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners. The guys operated in an environment which was challenging, and then because of high interest rates, inflation, which were high, coupled with geopolitical uncertainty. But Ashraf, after our elections, things improved, which led to better sentiments, and also rates and inflation moderated. Their revenue was up 4% because of higher fees. Profit as headline earnings per share up 10%. Lower credit losses reduced impairment charges, but their cost to income worsened by 2% to 55.9%, and they declared a final dividend of which was up by 8%. And market participants are more risk averse after it was confirmed that the Mexico, Canada, and Chinese tariffs are coming into effect from today, and also seeing those countries retaliating. And all this happening when there's a lot of soft data coming from the US. The latest being their February manufacturing PMI, which expanded marginally. And remember, manufacturing sector makes up 10% of the US economy. Ashraf, apparently tariffs will cost the average US household almost $1,200 per annum. That is the largest tax increase in a generation. Stocks and bonds and bond yields fell because of that, and we've seen our Q4 GDP improving, rising by 0.6%. Oil prices extended losses following reports that OPEC Plus will proceed with a planned output increase in April. One can be forgiven to think that it's Trump's pressure, as he has been on OPEC's case. Brent crude is down 1.2% at $70 a barrel, and since the yellow metal is used as a hedge in times of uncertainty, it's not surprising to see safe haven demand increasing. Given the latest developments on the tariff front, we see gold is up 0.8% at 2,916, platinum up 1.3% at 965, and it's a sea of red as global stocks are under pressure, with the JSE down 0.7%. The rand is flat against the dollar 18.57 and 23.60 against the pound and 19.55 against the euro.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Makwe. We'll connect again with you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's business feature, proudly sponsored by CFI, a leading trading app now available in South Africa. Download it now. Visit cfi.trade today.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Trade like a champion with CFI. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit CFI.trade today. CFI Financial Markets LLC is a Category 1 licensed broker by the UAE Securities and Commodities Authority. Trading involves high risk.
CFI, empower yourself.
So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, Sunday World keeps you updated. Get breaking news, sports action, and exclusive celeb scoops at your fingertips. Read it, stream it, listen to it. Sunday World, news for all, anytime, anywhere.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So South Africa, like it or not, has been in the news directly or indirectly in the last few weeks, right? Now, I'm not talking about Donald Trump and I'm not talking about AfriForum and everything else of that sort. In fact, the World Bank has also commented about things in South Africa, and they've looked at two things: the issues of excessive regulatory burden and a need to overhaul South Africa's BEE laws. Now, that's what they've said, and they say this because, you know, the nature of the World Bank and the IMF is like, you need money from them, you need help, you go to them, and they want to effectively put in some, I would suppose, conditions before they do business with you. So what then is the take of Duma Ubule, who's an economic analyst and very much self-styled BEE expert? Duma, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the invite. Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So now let's get to what the World Bank has said, right? Agree or disagree?
I disagree. Now, let me just tell you that the World Bank and its sister institution, the IMF, they've caused with their bad advice for African countries and countries in the global south. They've called untold misery for many countries. We had from the 80s in Africa with the structural adjustment programs and the privatization and the austerity programs that they force on countries. And I believe that we must not be lending from these institutions at all. We must shut the door on them. Yeah, okay. That's number one. Number two, on BE. Now, I'm not a self-styled expert on BE. I've worked on this. I've written a book on it. I worked with the president and we wrote the BE Commission report that paved the way for the current policies. There are many issues about the BE policies, but the World Bank doesn't have a clue what they're talking about. One of their recommendations, they said, is that we must simplify the BE legislation and make equity equivalent programs across all sectors. What they're forgetting is that the majority of South African large businesses are implementing BE as we speak, number one. Number two, like just go to any, maybe not in the mining industry, but the majority of South African companies are implementing BE company. Now, we have problems with the implementation of those policies. That's number one. Number two, they don't know what the equity equivalent program is. I used to advise one multinational company that was looking into the equity equivalent program, and we showed them the options, the sale of shares or an equity equivalent. They concluded that it's easier to sell shares to their employees than to do the equity equivalent. So they say that putting these equity equivalents across the economy will make it easier to implement BE. They don't have a clue what they're talking about, because to simplify, Ashraf, an equity equivalent for a company is money out for the company. When you do a BE transaction, it's money in. So this client that we're advising, they said that's basically what they said. So now I have to pay the money to these companies. Do you see what I'm saying? So they don't have an in-depth understanding of what they're talking about. So BE is not an... So now what we must do as South Africans, The black ownership on the JSE is about 1.2%. Number two, if you take out the non-South African assets on the JSE, it's about 6%. We have to further de-racialize ownership on the JSE. We have to provide increased financing for black SMMEs. That is my pet project. Let me tell you, 5 years ago, the Banking Association said total bank lending to black SMMEs in terms of their requirements that they signed, the agreements they signed in the mining charter, was 21 billion rands. That was 0.3% of their assets at the time. So we're not dealing with normal risk aversion towards SMMEs that you find in all countries in the world. You're dealing with racism. So we have to address this issue about lack of access to black SMMEs in the banking sector, the racist policies of the banks, number one, who were in parliament recently, and they refused, all of them, to disclose the lending to black SMMEs.
Okay.
Number two,
let me go back. I just want to go a step back before I come back to this. So I want to go back to the issue of the IMF and the World Bank, right? So, because I want you to help us understand this, right? You made the point initially, South Africa shouldn't be dealing with them at all, right? Now, if they don't deal with them and they need money, as this country does need money, as we've seen even with the budget speech.
No, we don't. No, we don't need their money. We don't need their money. So we've got enough resources in South Africa.
So where do we get the money from urgently?
There is what I call, I've been talking about the SA Inc. balance sheet. The SA Inc. balance sheet has got assets of 4.4 trillion rands. We must tap into this balance sheet. And the easier part, during COVID, we spent 60 billion rand to provide temporary, to pay cash to 13.8 million people who are unemployed temporarily. We didn't borrow money. We didn't tax anybody. We just paid the money from the UIF surplus. Currently, in that kitty of money, 60 billion rands paid to all these people. There's still 140 billion rand according to the withdrawn budget. And then the PIC has got assets of 3 trillion rands. We've got foreign exchange reserves of 1.2 trillion rands. The government has got cash in the withdrawn budget of 200 billion rands. Okay. So the government mustn't lie to the South African people and say the government is broke. We have a central bank that last year created monopoly money, 150 billion rand for the government. Why can't they do it again? So people, this idea that the government, we issue the currency and we can't run out of the currency that we issued. And during COVID, the central bank bought government debt on the secondary market. So these are things that have happened in the past that we're saying there's more to do.
All right. I want to pick up more about that. So why then, what happens? Why then the IMF and the World Bank? Let's pick that up right after this.
Mzansi Africa. SABC Sport is searching for talented football commentators. Are you knowledgeable and passionate about football commentary? Are you a great storyteller of the beautiful game?
That's why they're very good in controlling the ball and keeping it in minutes.
Submit a 2-minute commentary clip in your South African language of choice to commentator@sabcsport.co.za. Also email your full name, surname and contact details. Closing date is on Friday, 7 March 2025. Only shortlisted candidates will be invited for the second round of auditions at SABC Studios in March. SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us. Because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, continue to chat to Duma Kubule, but before I get to talking to him, you may want to make a note of this. Now, the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group technical meeting has kicked off in the Western Cape from March the 3rd, which is yesterday, up to tomorrow. global leaders are convening to tackle critical anti-corruption strategies. Discussions will focus on three key areas: strengthening public sector integrity, enhancing asset recovery, and promoting inclusive participation. This meeting marks a key step towards global accountability. A message by the Department of Public Service and Administration.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Okay, speaking to Duma Kubule, who's an economic analyst and certainly knows his way about issues of the BE and the BE laws, right? Now, you made the example, Duma, about alternative South Africa has in terms of funding, right? Let's just park that aside for the moment. I want to go back because I want to understand the World Bank. What is so bad about borrowing money or receiving some form of funding or the other from the World Bank or the IMF? Just to help us understand that.
So let me just tell you, if you read about Sri Lanka, you read about Kenya, read about the debt problems in Mozambique and emerging markets, the original sin in development finance is borrowing in foreign currency, accumulating foreign currency debt. Now, every developing country since the 80s, I've documented all of them, I've studied all of them, from Mexico in the early 80s until Sri Lanka recently. The number one issue that causes these emerging market crises is excessive borrowing in foreign currency. Now, in South Africa, we've got the unique privilege that only 10% of our debt is denominated in foreign currency, and only 25% of the ownership of government bonds is by foreigners. The numbers come down from 2017 from 41% to 10%. So we have what we call in modern monetary theory, a high degree of monetary sovereignty. So you can't get these these international lenders putting a gun to our head and forcing us to have these economic policies that are going to be economic suicide for us. So we've got monetary sovereignty and we must not throw it away. So the last time there was a sell-off of government bonds from 2017 to 2010 now, the banks picked up those bonds. So there wasn't any disruption. So that is a good thing. We must keep as much of our debt in domestic currency because we can't run out of domestic currency, but when we can run out of dollars, we can run out of yen. So then we have what we call currency mismatches where you can't pay these debts. Yeah.
Okay, so let's assume the government takes your advice and they certainly don't go the World Bank and the IMF route, and they pick up all that excess money that you've referred to already anyway, right? Let's then go back to the problem that South Africa is facing right now. In terms of the budget speech, right, it's clear that whatever it is, economic growth has been poor and is going on for about a decade or so, and therefore the government, in simple terms, does not have the money. So their idea was like, hold it, let's tax the public, those that can't afford it, 2% by just having this 2 percentage point increase in VAT, right? Now, that gets me thinking, if the government doesn't have money, that clearly has an impact on service delivery, something that we talk about every single day on this show. The broader question to you then, without what the World Bank says about BEE, right, is it fair to say that however it is structured, transformation has to happen, had to happen, but there's something that's gone wrong along the way insofar as it has not achieved the required level of growth that the country needs in the first place?
Yes. Okay, so now let's go back to the stats. So now it shows that in 2024, our GDP per person was lower than it was in 2007. So we've had about 18 years of declining average living standards. We can't continue like this. So now, if you ask, now, how do we get our country growing again? Now, let me start with the tax increases. Now, tax increases take money out of me and you's pockets, and it goes towards paying the debt. So how can I put it? The Treasury in the 2023 budget, they said tax increases have an impaired, they impede economic growth. They said it again in last year's budget. And they said we're not going to do any more tax increases because they are counterproductive. Because they reduce GDP consumption spending, they reduce GDP, and they reduce tax revenue. So it is a dumb cop move to try and increase government money through tax revenues, and the Treasury has been saying it every year since 2020. I read every single budget. So why did they suddenly, out of the blue, I heard that they just sneaked it in on the day of the budget. Why out of the blue? This is the Treasury that is responsible for this economic crisis. The Treasury and the Central Bank are the two most important institutions in our economy. They have the macroeconomic policy tools. Them and nobody else have the macroeconomic policy tools to grow this economy. So if they can't grow the economy and create jobs, they're incompetent and must be replaced.
Maybe that's the bigger question. We've got about a minute to go. Why they did so? Perhaps they took it for granted, as what happens every single year. Because
but you don't take it for granted for 18 years.
The African National Congress has been the government and the only government for all these years. So it may have been a rubber stamp approach all these years. This time around, on the day, they found it very, very different. Right. Okay. So moving forward. Should we rethink not the principle of BEE, because I completely agree with the principle, but the implementation, because you gave the example of the JSE and the 1%. There's something that's just wrong there, isn't it?
Yes, there's something that's wrong, and it's a separate discussion, Ashraf, but I don't even know where to start. Let's give funding to black SMEs. They're suffering a lot. Let's have empowerment from bottom up. The National Empowerment Fund hasn't received a government allocation since inception in 2004. They have never had, they've had clean audits every year for 20 years, and they don't get a cent from government. We have to capitalize institutions like this. And nobody's talking about this. How does this institution continue to give loans when they've never had any capital from the government for 20 years? This is a miracle, and we should be celebrating it and giving them more money because they're clearly doing something right.
Okay. And so here's a quick one. We're on to news. I'm interjecting you. My apologies. We're on to news time. I can't remember who said this, but they said something like, if you look after unemployment, that means turn unemployed into employed, you'll be looking after the budget as well, right? So what should South Africa do around the issue of looking after unemployment? You've got 30 seconds.
Okay, they must inject new money into the economy as consumption spending, as infrastructure. We need a blended stimulus that will address the immediate poverty of the people, cash payouts to the people, and infrastructure that creates jobs. Simple, yeah.
22 seconds is what you need, so you still got 8 seconds left. We'll do it some other time. Duma, thank you for your time. Duma Qubule, economic analyst, certainly gets you thinking not just about today and what the World Bank says, but definitely ahead of that budget speech that comes up on the 12th of March. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. A drop in fuel prices and clashes at the Afghan border. Good day to you. The Road Freight Association has welcomed the marginal drop in fuel prices this month, noting that it follows months of substantial increases. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources has confirmed that both grades of petrol will drop by 7 cents a litre at midnight tonight. Diesel users will pay 17.5 and 23.5 cents less a litre, depending on the grade. At the same time, households will pay 8 cents less for paraffin, and LP gas will drop by 2 cents a kilogram. The association's Gavin Kelly.
But obviously any decrease in fuel prices, whether it's petrol, diesel, which is the main fuel used in the transport industry, or illuminating paraffin or benzene, depending on what types of equipment is used, is always a good note to have. It reduces pressure on prices and on the transportation of prices.
Labour Federation COSATU says there are ways for government to recover the revenue it seeks for budget allocations without having to raise VAT. The Finance Minister set to finalise a reworked budget ahead of the March 12th delivery date of his budget speech. COSATU's Matthew Parks explains.
We've simply given government a variety of options to look at. Some may make sense, some might be quite easy to do, some must be done, and some, of course, may not be preferable or ideal, but we don't think the crisis is unmanageable. There really is a shortfall of about 24 billion rand in a budget of more than 2 trillion rand. There is space to reprioritize expenditure. There is a need, actually, number one, to capacitate SARS to improve tax compliance, because you've got 800 billion rand of taxes, existing taxes, owed to SARS, to the state. And that should really be our number one priority before we look at other measures.
The Border Management Authority says it's considering moving some ports of entry away from large rivers and dams. It says this is part of contingency measures to avoid flooding at the points of entry. Severe flooding resulted in port operations being suspended at Stockport, Grobler's Bridge and Pontrift in Limpopo since yesterday. The authority's Peter Mbilo.
We've inherited ports that are situated in the close proximity to big rivers, and with the changes, including climate change as well, our ports becomes extremely vulnerable to such. But we have started thinking of alternative plans which would require us, BMA and other government stakeholders to engage, which will be followed by the engagements with our counterparts in Botswana. As you are aware that for us to relocate the port, it may not only require our decision as a country, we also need to agree with our counterparts where our ports are located.
The Human Settlements Minister Thembi Simelane says they committed to housing people closer to their workplaces. She was speaking in Midrand, north of Johannesburg, where she inaugurated the Grand Central Social Housing Project.
In the 400 or so million that was spent here, around 280 something I think comes from the Department of Human Settlements. So you may not be getting at that scale continuously for all the years to come, but we'll try to maintain that.
Fresh clashes have erupted between Pakistani and Afghan security forces near their joint border. Reports say heavy artillery was used overnight, damaging several buildings at the Torkham border crossing. A Taliban official says one of their fighters has been killed. 6 Pakistani soldiers were wounded in the fighting that began over the weekend due to a dispute over the construction of a checkpoint. The top story, the Road Freight Association has welcomed the marginal drop in fuel prices this month, noting that it follows months of substantial increases. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
In sports this hour, SA Open to be held at Stellenbosch Golf Club next year. And India sitting on 179 for 4 after 35 overs. They need 86 runs in 89 balls to win. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound is queuing on the link to the N12 east at Kiluli's interchange. The M1 southbound is queuing towards Boysons. Rivonia Road in Sunninghill is slow moving at Witkoppen Road, and Main Road in Loneal has flooding reported at Yixkay River Bridge, so approach with caution. In KZN, the N3 eastbound is queuing at Cliffdale, the N3 westbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N2 southbound queuing towards the M41 Gateway exit. In the northwest, on the N4 in Zeerust, protesting reported at Leherutse, and the road is closed. In Cape Town, the M7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound slow moving towards the R300 junction, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road, the M3 inbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, and the M5 southbound queuing towards Racecourse Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.2 FM in East London.
Bafana are taking on Lesotho at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium on the 21st of March 2025 at 6 p.m. for the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifier. Come early, dressed to commemorate Human Rights Day and support Bafana for a chance to win prizes from our host, Limpopo Government and Polokwane Municipality. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets start from 70 Rand for adults with special rates available at 40 Rand for children under 12 at all Ticket Pro outlets. If you can't make it to Polokwane, catch the game live on SABC2 at 6 p.m. or visit sabcsport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
The Seagulls want to play their hearts out to secure maximum points on home soil.
And Pedro could be in here. Pedro's one-on-one. João Pedro! That is impeccable.
Meanwhile, the Cottagers understand the power of 3 points. They want a comfortable top half position.
Back in, Ralph. Yes! It's been coming! What a piece, and we deserve that, Fulham. That's a great finish from Raul. It was a great move.
This is the Premier League. Experience the spectacular action between Brighton and Hove Albion FC and Fulham FC. The Saturday 8 March at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
We have had so many people commenting on my conversation with Duma Qubule, who spoke about the World Bank and the IMF and the budget speech and BE and everything else in between that, right? And here's a comment, Ashraf, absolutely incredible analysis from Duma Qubule. We should have more and more analysis from him. Usually we hear from analysts pro-poor World Bank and the IMF analysts. I hope government officials listen to his analysis as well. And then there's a bit more that I can't quite read, but I mean, that's the gist of that conversation, right? And there's more. Now, I'll tell you what, feel free to comment on that. What do you think? I mean, is he right in his analysis? He's very scathing in his criticism of the World Bank and the IMF. Is he right? What are the other alternatives? Of course, he's given a domestic alternative, but are there other things you can consider, or are most developing countries needing developing funding completely enslaved by the funds that they get from the World Bank or the IMF, right? To call in 086 000 2032, then WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. We had a fascinating conversation as well about the one thing that you want to grow South Africa with Bruce Whitfield. Listen to that conversation on the podcast, as well as the conversation we had with Corne Muda, the newly elected leader of the Freedom Front Plus. Lots to consider there. Tweet as well. Tag SFM Radio. Tag me, Ashraf Garda. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. Okay, let's do this. In fact, we're going to now talk about our energy, right? Because the minister, and I'm talking about South Africa's Minister of Electricity. I always said they should call him Minister of Energy, right? Anyway, Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kosciencio Ramokgopa, has been addressing the media at the Africa Energy in Durban. We're going to play some comment from him in a moment, but first things first, let me introduce Professor Vali Padiachi, who is a power and energy expert and a former executive manager of Eskom and a former senior executive of City Power Joburg. Prof. Padiachi, you've got your sources all covered here. We're just about involved in everything that I can consider. Thanks for connecting to us on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon to you and your listeners. I'm glad to be back on your show. And yes, it's been a long career, so I've managed to cover all angles.
There we are. All right, let me do this then. Let me play what the minister spoke about today, the Minister of Electricity, when he addressed the Africa Energy in Durban.
To everyone, thank you very much for making time to join us this afternoon at this press conference. So the intention really is not to repeat the opening remarks, it's just to highlight the significance of this energy in Durban, Africa Energy in Durban. I'm advised that it is on its 17th edition, so the 17th installment of the Africa Energy in Durban. Just two transversal issues that, in my opinion, requires attention. The first one is that we are experiencing a situation where the geopolitical issues are becoming more and more fluid. We are seeing that there's minerals nationalization, issues of protectionism, like I said earlier on, the weaponization of trade. I think requires that Africa must have an honest conversation with itself. And I think the energy complex is able to surface in the most acute fashion some of these manifestations of first the political economy of energy, but also its geopolitical manifestations. That although Africa is the most mineral rich of all continents, yet it is the most energy deprived of all these continents, the most underdeveloped, the poorest of all the regions. And the point we're making is that it is important that in the context of the conversations around the critical minerals and the transition to cleaner forms of energy, we take stock of the possibilities for the continent. That some of these minerals that are going to anchor and underpin these transitions are found in the main on the continent. But the biggest challenge that is confronting us is the ability to finance this kind of the investments that are required for us to be able to realize the potential of the continent. So the issues of the financing gap should be issues that is front and center of the conversation. And we are calling for a number of steps to be taken, including but not limited to the need to reconfigure the cost of capital. And our view is that developing nations face exorbitant borrowing costs due to the perceived risks that do not reflect economic fundamentals, but rather outdated and what I refer to as biased credit ratings. So it's important that issues of risk allocation should be assigned to parties that have got the best capability of resolving that risk amongst others. And in the issues of expanding the fiscal space, we do accept that the debt balance that are placed on the African countries are crippling and undermine their ability to invest in issues of development, issues around climate resilience and clean energy transitions. So of course this is what sovereign nations need to do to ensure that we are able to use a country's balance sheet to the extent that is possible to enable the investments that are required in this space. And then we are advocating for greater coordination between the financial actors. So what you see is that there's some degree of asymmetry and fragmentation. The multilateral development banks on the one side, the development finance institutions on the other, and issues around the vertical climate funds. And what this does is because there are some degree of misalignment, so it undermines the possibility of us achieving greater efficiencies, and this is going to hinder impact of the pockets of fund that these players are bringing to the fore to help to anchor, if you like, this kind of transitions and the issues of sustainable development, the ability of the continent to extract and beneficiate closer to source, and thereby broadening the industrial flow of their respective jurisdictions. And then there's a need for us to strengthen the role of national development banks. Where they exist, I think there's a need for recapitalization, especially here in South Africa. I think the DBSA can play a much, much bigger role if it's recapitalized, so that, I mean, it competes with some of your commercial banks, and therefore they're unable to provide the kind of concessionality that is associated with development banks, and therefore it stands or undermine, if you like, the prospect of them anchoring the kind of industries that we want to see, because they must compete with the commercial banks on the same rates. And then there's a need to work very hard to attract private sector investments. Of course, this is also a function of issues of political stability, leadership questions, the function of the deepening of democracy, the ossification of the foundations of democracy that will give a market the necessary confidence for them to invest on the continent. And of course, this requires that the political actors, the elected representatives, should work very hard to ensure that there's a degree of stability at the political level, but create the necessary conditions, introduce the kind of reforms that are necessary to spur on private sector investment. So those are some of the interventions that they were proposing for us to be able to realize the potential of the continent. And then
okay, so that, as you would surely guess, is the voice of South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, right? He's addressing the media at the 2025 Africa Energy Endowment. So he's speaking about not South Africa, but Africa as a continent. With me is Professor Vali Padiachi, right, who's a power and energy expert, former executive manager of Eskom, and a former senior executive of City Power Joburg. Right, so Prof. Padiachi, let's pick up on this here. He started by saying, the most telling point is that Africa is the continent which is the most mineral rich, but also the most energy deprived. And everything else he said after that, I suppose, was trying to turn that on its head. What do you want to pick up in terms of what he said that is most telling?
Well, if I were to distill that and being somebody that's been long in the energy sector, what he's saying, if I were to just unpack it quickly, is that if you look at Africa, I think we have just over 1 billion population, and if my stats is correct, about 600 million. Well, let me take a step back. There's about 736 million people globally that do not have access to electricity, and of the 736 million, these are IEA figures, about 600 million are in Africa, and most of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. So that talks to his point about, and this is common knowledge, Africa is very rich in minerals, energy minerals, and yet, as I've quoted a little too, we are energy poor. We're in terms of energy poverty. And what he's saying, that needs to be redressed in the midst of the significant change in global geopolitical conditions.
So what did he say in terms of the redress? He gave a whole lot of different, he spoke about maybe 10 different points. I'll leave it to you to just zone in on some of the points that you think are most telling that you'd like to raise.
Well, as is common knowledge, the energy sector is asset intensive and capital intensive, so we need lots of capital. But what he said was, we need to reconfigure the cost of capital that gets very simply allocated to Africa. What he's saying is that developing countries like Africa, we face exorbitant borrowing due to, and just to quote him, perceived risks that do not reflect economic fundamentals. I think that's a decade-old challenge that we have.
Is he correct? Is he spot on in that assessment? That means that the higher cost of borrowing that African countries have to pay or bear is inconsistent with what I would say, good governance in the countries, or in fact, does a good governance not exist, and therefore that's why the risk is higher?
Well, let me answer it yes or no. Yes, meaning that these are all business people that want to invest in the country, and if there's perceived risk, they will factor it in. You pay higher borrowings, so they see Africa as a risk, period. So they will factor that in. But in terms of whether that's correct, I don't believe it's correct. And I think this is what the minister is saying. We need to, and he's talking about the politicians. The politicians need to now start playing the role where they uplift the risk profile of Africa so that we do not pay those exorbitant rates going forward.
But I'm going to suggest, that has an impact on the geopolitics of the region, something we'll pick up on right after this.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on HEALA.org. That's HEALA.org.
Whether we are at the workplace, within communities, at school, or with our friends and family, we all need to demonstrate the kind of responsibility that we would like to see in our country's future. SAFM commemorates Human Rights Month. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Well, we are talking about effectively the state of Africa's energy, really, at the Africa Energy Indaba in response to the comments made by Minister Ramakgopa at this Indaba. With me, Professor Vali Padayachie. Now, Vali, we were speaking earlier on about, the cost of borrowing from these multinational organizations, right? And I'm just suggesting, and clearly I love my country and I love my continent, right? But just a few days ago, I was looking at some of the hotspots in the world, right? And it's disproportionate. We have so many hotspots in the world that are in Africa. I can think about the goings on in East Africa right now and in West Africa as well, and what's happening in neighboring Mozambique just fairly recently. I mean, doesn't that all lend itself, right, to the perception of Africa being very, very risky to do business with by business people, not by politicians?
You're absolutely correct, Ashraf. In fact, I can talk from a business angle myself. Yes, I mean, those are all risk, and those countries that you're talking about that are in turmoil at the moment are actually energy rich and minerals rich. So if the private sector wants to invest in that, if they do invest in those countries, then they'll factor in the risk.
Okay, so what then should we be doing? Because lots of suggestions made by the minister. What can the continent do and do urgently, short term, and then obviously medium and long term?
Well, I think simply we got to get to a situation of stability. So the politicians have to come to the party, and wherever in the continent we have these hotspots, we need to get to a level of normality. That's the first thing. The other one is look at our governance, and I think it's common knowledge that there's always talk of corruption, and it's difficult to do business in Africa. We need to address that. Then the minister talked about strengthening the role of national development banks. He talked about the DBSA, where they should be recapitalized. And then also looking at people. You can have the best systems, etc., but if you don't have productive people, workforce, foot soldiers, then you will not be productive. So you need to address that. But I think in short, or in the long term, we need to start beneficiation. So Africa is noted for sending away our raw materials. We should be starting industries and manufacturing that will beneficate these raw materials so that we create more jobs in Africa, improve the economies, etc., etc.
Now, maybe finally, your point about saying governments must come together. I'm going to suggest rather critically that we could wait for decades for that. I mean, just every single day we talk about hotspots and coups in certain African countries and poor governance. So, what happens if we don't come together? America is a good example. You can debate their governance, but people still do business with them, and the same may apply to Europe as well, and to some parts of the Middle East too. So what happens if they don't come together? How then do we circumvent that and still do business with these business people?
Well, I think if we don't come together, then I think countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, other countries in Africa should continue with the development, enhancing the economies, etc., so that we have pockets of excellence throughout Africa, and that pockets of excellence or centers of excellence starts to evolve into other countries, and eventually, and hopefully that's rather sooner than later, we get to a continent that's the normal viewed and inverted commas the pariah of the world, and becomes a place where people can invest, Ashraf.
Okay, well, let's hope we move from pockets of excellence to oceans of excellence. I mean, we'll all be on side on that. Appreciate your time, Professor Vali Padayachie. Thank you for your time and your insights here on the National Pulse.
Thank you.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Okay, so here's something that's so interesting. The mining company PP Gemstones held a media briefing today to share details of its legal dispute with Assmang, ASSMANG, right? A prominent mining company jointly owned by Patrice Motsepe's African Rainbow Minerals. Now, the SABC News economics reporter, Katlego Legodi, covered the briefing and he's now on the line. Katlego, good to connect with you as always on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, John, and good afternoon to the listeners as well.
All right, what happened today? Tell me more.
Oh, yeah. No, Ashraf, actually what came out here today was a press briefing by this company called PP Gemstones. It is a mining company operating within the critical or rare minerals space. So we found them today just laying or just giving us a sense of this dispute that has been ongoing with a company called Assmang. It's a prominent mining company jointly owned by Patrice Motsepe's African Rainbow Minerals, and they are accused here of carrying out illegal mining activities unabated here. The reason why they find themselves really in the middle of this storm is because of this rare mineral that is called sergilite. It's a gemstone mineral that we're told here that there's only one company, mining company, that has a license to mine that particular commodity, this being a PP Gemstone. But we've seen this particular company that is affiliated with Patrice Motsepe, the African Rainbow Minerals, this being Assmang, they are accused of illegally mining this rare commodity, and in any way even blocking PP Gemstone from getting the best out of this space, because where this particular commodity was discovered is through the facility of Assmang. So Assmang is more or less licensed to mine iron ore, mine manganese, but not gemstone, this being this particular gemstone that we're talking about here, a sergilite. But then really we found them accused of mining this particular commodity, even being accused of smuggling this commodity outside of South Africa through the black market. And all of these are issues that are before the courts as we speak right now.
Okay, maybe it's early days. Was there any reaction from anybody that you'd like to share?
So what is happening really is we saw small mining companies that also today gave us a sense of where they find themselves in terms of being new entrants in this space, where they're saying that really when you look at it, they've been hard done by big companies that are already operating within this space that would in any way block them from operating here. Interesting was to hear that this is a matter that Minister Gwede Mantashe is well aware of, but it is a dispute that has even landed in the courts here. We're hearing that monthly the country is losing about 300 billion to 500 billion rand that is linked to this particular commodity, but the economy is not getting anything from this particular activity. So today, just speaking to some of those companies that were there on the ground, we reached out to the Department of Mineral Resources or Minerals and Petroleum, that being the department under Minister Gwede Mantashe. They're saying they'll follow up where this matter is concerned, but Assmang maintaining here that there's nothing untoward that they're doing, saying theirs is to operate within the confines of the law. But we hear this particular company, PP Gemstone, saying that they've been frustrated because here they're going against the giant of the company that has been operating over time, owned by Patrice Motsepe, and they've got the monies to frustrate them. And it's a race against time when you look at it as well here, Ashraf, because by November, this particular company, PP Gemstone, is going to be losing their license. Their license to mine this commodity is expiring in November, and they are worried that November is going to come and they may find themselves having not mined at all.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Let's see how that story develops. Appreciate your time as always, Katlego Legodi, the SABC News economics reporter. Let's get to the news headlines. Here's Greg Hose.
A quick look at the headlines. President Ramaphosa says South Africa and Mozambique will continue to work together to ensure their stability following a wave of demonstrations in Maputo linked to disputed polls. The Road Freight Associations welcomed the marginal drop in fuel prices this month, and the Johannesburg Metro Police Department's called on the public to report unethical behaviour by its officers. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 eastbound in central Johannesburg, slow moving towards Heidelberg Road. The M1 southbound is queuing towards Boysons. The N1 southbound in Midrand, queuing towards Buccleuch Interchange. And the N1 northbound in Centurion, slow moving towards Botha Avenue. In KZN, the M1 Higginson Highway eastbound in Chatsworth has a crash reported at the N2 highway. The N3 westbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a crash before the M41 Gateway exit reported, and on the M19 eastbound in Westville, a crash after Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound, a stationary vehicle reported before Hospital Bend. The M3 Philip Hosana Drive outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. Dayton Cross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway, and Plain Street is closed opposite the National Parliament building. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So, to me, South Africa playing New Zealand tomorrow in the Champions Trophy. But if I was South African, I did say they'll be in the final because it's only New Zealand. But they would be worried about who's going to win between Australia and India, and you've got all the news.
Well, it seems like India are just on the verge of advancing to the final. They are on 213 for 4 after 41 overs. They need 52 runs in 50 balls to win. Remember, earlier on, Australia were bowled out for 264 after 49 overs, and Steve Smith top scored at 73, with Mohammad Shami standing out with standout figures of 3 for 48. So we are yet to see who will make it through to the final. Meanwhile, all-rounder George Lender was added to the Proteas Champions Trophy squad as a travelling reserve today, with concerns mounting about the fitness of Aiden Markram. Lender has been in excellent form across all formats this season, and he threw himself into the spotlight with a player of the match performance against Pakistan in a T20 international in December. In golf, the 115th Investec SA Open will be held at Stellenbosch Golf Club at the end of February next year. This will be the only second time that Stellenbosch Golf Club hosts the SA Open in its history, and the first time since 2009. In football, there's a high chance that a South African will play in the Champions League tonight. South African teenager Chandre Campbell, who plays for Club Brugge, he's been included in the 22-man squad for the first leg of their last 16 tie against Aston Villa. Campbell was promoted to the Brugge first team squad in January after impressing with the club's reserve team in the second tier of Belgian football. He joined the club from Supersport United and scored 6 goals, providing 1 assist in 15 matches. Additionally, he has represented Amajita in the Under-20 COSAFA Cup. In other fixtures to look forward to in the Champions League, Real Madrid versus Atletico Madrid, PSV versus Arsenal, and Dortmund, they take on LOSC. In the meantime, Kaizer Chiefs will be aiming to return to winning form when they face off against Magezi tonight in the Betway Premiership, and then Maruma Gallants play Stellenbosch FC also this evening. Elsewhere, Manchester City defender Nathan Ake underwent surgery on a fractured foot on Monday after coming off against Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup at the weekend. The 30-year-old was replaced at halftime on Saturday, and now he faces another spell on the sidelines. In rugby, Sharks loose head Ntutuko Mgunu is set to join the Stormers at the end of the current season. The 25-year-old has been earmarked as one of the rising stars of South African rugby and will be looking to take the next step in his career in Cape Town. He will add, obviously, to the depth of Stormers from front row and is going to compete against the likes of Ali Vermaak, Steve Sitole, and Vernon Matongo for that number 1 jersey next season. On that note, it is a wrap from my side.
So, just looking at that India game, because that matters to us. I mean, they need 50 runs, 6 wickets in hand.
Yes.
Five runs and over.
Right now they're sitting on 40 runs. They need 40 runs off 44 balls.
I must say, my mind is cast back to that last World Cup. Was it last year? I almost think South Africa were in exactly the same position. Only thing that needed to happen was Bumrah was still going to bowl for India, and we lost that final. Okay,
Don't
let's not be depressed.
Yes,
because
exactly.
we were in that position. I remember Kaz Naidu saying that the Indian journalists were coming up to her and say, "Congratulations, your team won." Oh my goodness. No.
Let us not even think about that. They're looking to not choke again.
Don't even mention that. You better say your goodbyes.
That's it.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
And then, how? SK, where are you going with that stuff?
My dog. I'm going whale watching. New hobby, you see. Finally going out to explore the world. Giri levels, Dwana.
I see the life jacket, but I don't know how an inflatable boat, megaphone, and a fishing rod fits into all of this.
How else am I going to get to the whales, Bongs? I need the boat. The megaphone is to do my whale calls, and the fishing rod is called ambiance. Ambiance. If you don't get it, forget about it.
Okay, but SK, you know there aren't any whales here in Germiston Lake.
Ooh, Shem, Mr. Know-it-all. Whales live in the water, and Germiston Lake has water.
Hey, sure, Ntwana, go whale watching in Germiston Lake. Me! I'll tune into Whale with Steve Buckshall, Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3.
This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us. Because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Jimmy. What is today? Today is it's certainly not Monday. In fact, and it's not a Monday, and it's not a Tuesday, and it's not even Jimmy at all. It's Dudu Ramela who's hosting the SAFM Market Update. Dudu, you go for it. What's setting the scene today?
Hello, Ashraf, and good evening to your viewers. Don't worry about it. I am growing some hairs on my chin, so it's okay. When we take a look at what's coming up come 6 p.m., we take a look at results. So it is a results-heavy show. We're going to be starting with Nedbank. They have reported really a good set of results, and they will be talking to us as well about their organizational restructuring of the retail and business banking sector, as well as the Nedbank Wealth clusters. So we'll be speaking to Jason Quinn, the CEO of Nedbank. He'll expand on that for us. Shoprite has done incredibly well. It's safe to say that they are leading the FMCG corporate retail sector. Pieter Engelbrecht is the CEO of Shoprite, and he's going to be telling us about the secret behind the success, including it's 60/60, a brand that I guess everybody knows of within the bigger brand. We're going to be speaking to Boipelo Lekubo, CFO of Harmony Gold. They've recorded record gold prices. Well, not them, but record gold prices rather. Saw them get their numbers really high. So we will be talking to us about the results this evening. And Discovery has upped its dividend. Adrian Gore will tell us how they managed to achieve that. And we're also going to be speaking to Rainer Kriek, a managing director at Sentinel Homes. So there is a concept about an alternative, more so for freelancers who are not able to get property because of certain restrictions when it comes to mortgages. He's going to be explaining to us what the alternative is for people who are in the so-called gig economy. So if your income is not stable but you want to get a home, he's going to be telling us about the alternatives for this and the agreements that you can get into with a service provider to make sure that you are able to get that asset. And then we're going to be speaking to Simon Brown, founder of Just One Lap. He's going to be looking in depth at the markets and how they performed today. That's the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb come at 6 p.m. It's back to you, Ashraf.
Okay, perfect. You have a great show, the SAFM Market Update 6 to 7, and then sport with Michael coming up, Michael Abramson. That is 7 to 8. Don't miss that. Right. Okay, let's get to your calls after this. In fact, let's get to...
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Right, I'm sure lots of people have lots to say about lots of things, about all the things we've spoken about on this show, which reflects the mood of the National Pulse. So let's hear it. Henry in Harry Smith. Go for it, Henry.
Yes, bro, how's it?
Yeah, very good indeed, man. Right, your point?
Hey, like China.
Sweet me, bra. Go for it.
Like me, bro. China, listen, man. South Africans need to know something. They need to read. If we can have a reading society, then we have a better society. There was a meeting held somewhere, I think in the 80s there, whereby they were telling, they took a decision that they want to abolish the middle class. Now, that thing, according to me as a reader, is operational. I can see it. Now, the middle class in South Africa, we're talking nurses, we're talking soldiers, we're talking police, we're talking traffic cops, all those people. Now, I used to tell my friends, my brass, I've got the brass in that field. So I used to tell them that, guys, look, what is going on? What is he? What is he, guys? They got it right. They're a little bit light. But now, the fact is, if you destroy a middle class, then you destroy the society.
Okay, I think many people will concur with you about that. That don't. But how does this change the issue of the bribery we've been discussing? Henry, thanks for that. Destroy the middle class, destroy an entire nation. True, false? Does anybody else have another view on that issue? Right, Temba in Kempton Park. Go for it, Temba. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good man. Right, your point.
Good man. Yes, my point is, first of all, I want to emphasize that South Africa is no South Africa without Afrikaans language. They are our brothers. They are here to stay. We love them. We've gone all the way to be where we are. I wanted just to say to the Freedom Front leader, I think that's corny. As South Africans, we must really remember that we all, especially the Afrikaners went through the affirmative action as well. Let's read it. It's all there. We know. They, during the 40s, the 50s, they were much marginalized. They were much poorer than the English. And the Afrikaner politicians lobbied for Afrikaners to be given the first chances, or let me put it this way, affirmative action. And they were given affirmative action.
Okay, so what's your bottom line? I'm gonna push you.
My bottom line is, it is said that the same brothers who got affirmative actions when they were marginalized don't want the other brothers of theirs to be done the same.
Okay,
that's my bottom line.
Got that, Temba in Kempton Park. You should consider maybe doing a late night show, Temba, around like a nice night jazz show. You got the voice for it, so I think. Glenn in Bedfordview, go for it, Glenn.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, go for it. Your point.
What Ashford Forum is doing, I don't agree with it. But I think this opens up a debate about the entire land issue, and the government must be utterly honest, because we have things like Ngonyama Trust. Those are the things that the government, this is an opportune moment for the government to fix the issue of land once and for all, properly, without targeting certain race groups. They must look at things like in Ngonyama Trust, because there are many Zulu people who don't agree with what the king is doing there, with all the land that they don't own, but they have to pay monthly sort of rental to it. So the government must just open up a debate properly and fix this thing once and for all. My parting shot, Ashraf, is this. The government must put a stop to Malima's rhetoric about killing of white people and those kill the Boers, kill the farmers thing. The government must put a stop to this thing once and for all. There mustn't be selective opening of cases and dealing with the certain races in the country.
Well, I think thank you for that, Glenn. I think you may be spot on. The conversation I had with Corne Mulder early on, talks to that and the previous conversations we had yesterday with a guy called the Beter Einders, right? I think it's time for a complete rethink about, without being arrogant about, we this and we that and go to hell or leave the country and do this and do that. There needs to be a rethink about everything. That means your point about the trust, the Ngonyama Trust as well is important, but also a whole lot of things. I mean, it's ultimately, do we want to build a nation or don't we want to build a nation? We must decide it. And if we don't want to build a nation, then we all pay the price for a weakened nation. And if we want to build a nation, we're going to have to come back to the table and sit once again. And if anything, this Trump card, if I can call it that, has put this on the agenda once again. That's the one unintended benefit from Trump, that maybe it's forced us now to rethink who we are, where we are, and where we want to go. So that's a good call, Glenn. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
More thoughts. Let's go to Cape Town now. Magesi on the line. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. And I trust you are well, but go for it.
Yeah, look, man, I wanted to talk about crime. You see, this there is a register, the sexual, the sexual offenders.
That register, yes, yeah.
Yes, where does that thing sit? How do we access it?
Okay, I don't quite know how we access it. Let's try and get Tembo Keys to assist me with that one, to say how. I think it should be readily available, yeah.
Yeah, and then now my suggestion was that, you see, people who are found guilty on such crimes, especially those ones who sleep with young kids.
Yeah.
And then like we stamp them on the face, so that you know, like, when this person walks wherever they walk. So especially when they are released on parole, because they reoffend again. So we stamp them so that whenever you see them, then you'll be able to tell that, like, you'll know that this one is not someone that I must be close with.
All right, so let's find out. I mean, we'll try and get it from Keys in terms of where we can get this this register. That's very important. Magesi, thanks for that. Boyizwa in Parktown, go for it.
Thanks, Ashraf, for taking my call.
Thank you.
I think, you know what, this Afri Forum thing,
yeah,
it's not going to work, because, you know, it's one-sided. People, especially those who are indigenous, I know they don't.
But when you say AfriForum thing is not going to work, what do you mean? I'm not clear what you mean.
This whole journey that they took to White House and met some councillors, whoever they met there, to try and lie, you know, and they cannot come back and tell us that they're doing what Mandela, the leaders, did, because we were in our own motherland. We're treated by people invaded our land.
But I mean, I want to interject you because I want to move on. But I hear your point, and we've heard that from many, many people. And I think we all agree with that. That in fact, we understand there's some concerns from, say, the Afrikaner community, like any others, right? But a lot of the story that's been spun in the USA has been spun incorrectly. I think every one of us agrees with that, or the majority anyway. The big question is, what do we do now about it? What happens next?
It cannot be one-sided. They need to sit down and introspect themselves, because they are the ones who bring it up. They must sit down and introspect themselves. You can't actually reconcile with somebody who doesn't want, somebody who doesn't respect you. Your dignity is always undermined.
Okay, got that. You've got us thinking. Well, thanks for that. Let's see. I'm going to read some of the WhatsApps as well. There's some text messages too, right? In fact, let me get to the WhatsApps first, then we'll get to the callers. Right. So, and many people, by the way, if I can't read all your messages, you can also tweet it out, and many people do that. Tweet it. Just tag us on the X platform, SFM Radio, and myself. So, lots of comments on the traffic officers' stories that we've had as well too.
Ashraf, Boswayo in the Western Cape. I'm a trucker myself. On N3, going out of Durban, even going into Durban, just between Harris Smith or the problem starts from Van Riemen Pass, going down and coming back from Durban. Those traffic officials will even escort you to the ATM. You will leave your truck there on the freeway. Someone else will guard it. They will take you with their car to go draw money. You know, so really, because they always promise you that the ticket is gonna be something like about 2,000 rands or so, just for overspeeding. Then you opt to go draw the 500 rands or 1,000 rands that they can share among themselves.
Well, I suppose you call that highway robbery, isn't it? Here's another one, which I think is interesting.
Hi, Ashraf. Hi, SAFM listeners. Concerning the one thing I would do if I was president for 30 minutes is I would encourage or teach people how to manage money. Notice I didn't say financial management, how to manage money, basic money management. When people learn how to manage money, what comes in versus what goes out, they are able to save. And when they're able to save, they can better plan for their future. That will be the one thing I will do, basic money management. DG
Wow.
Cape Town, thank you.
And you wonder just why so many people don't do just that one thing.
Hello, Ashraf. In South Africa, it's very, very petty. It's very, very petty. All the people, they are taking bribes. People are corrupt, even at work. We could find it at ESCOM. People that are working at ESCOM, they are paying bribes. You go there, you look for work, you can't get employed because people are relying on bribes. People that are on top there, they are relying on bribes. You will find that you can't get work without paying. Ashraf is bad. It's very, very, very bad in South Africa.
You wonder how that culture became the norm and whether others do the same thing as well. I'm talking about other countries too, right?
Yes, it once happened to me. My disc license was not renewed. I wasn't aware, of course. I had recently had a car and my husband was taking care of things. So the traffic officer told me about it. I told him I wasn't aware. I was irresponsible. Said, give me a drink. Well, without even thinking, I asked, what drink? And he said, oh, you think you're clever. Gave me a ticket. And that was it. From KZN.
Oh, there we are. Okay. By the way, just an update on the issue of the that sex offenders register. So it's called the National Sex Offenders Register, right? And, Temba, my producer, just made the point to say, just remember, it's not yet been made public. That was the intention. And the reason why it's not yet been made public, there's been some legislative issues that the Department of Justice is still working on, right? And around those issues, confidentiality and disclosure provisions are the reason why the entire process now has been stalled, just for now, okay? Right, further comments? Mplongo in KZN, go for it.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Thanks for calling in.
Ashraf, I just wanted to reflect on Connie's interview, the one that you had before.
Yeah.
He's coming on talking about sitting down and talk and so on. Now, sitting down and talk because there are people who have to account for what they did now. Why did they not see it fit to do that in order to understand that? Because clearly they took the act and they misrepresented it elsewhere outside of the country. And now we must sit down and talk. I just couldn't believe it, I don't know where we go.
No, but I'll tell you why I'm saying that. The sit down and talk is what countries do, what good leadership does, even in moments of adversity, even if you think they're wrong. If you ask me is AfriForum wrong? Absolutely. If you ask me whether there's been high degrees of exaggeration, yes. But good leadership sits down and chats about it, even when there's huge pressure on actually alienating people even further. It doesn't serve South Africa's interest to alienate anybody, even if they are wrong. I mean, that's just my point. Yeah.
No, I agree with it. You know, one of the things that by the time 4 years comes and the Trump is out of office, we the social cohesion will just taken a huge knock in South Africa. I can assure you that. And one of the things that is going to happen, as far as my assessment goes, I'm not an expert, is the movement towards the left organization by people, black people. And when you have that, it's not ideal what we wanted to have in South Africa. But if people are talking about sitting down and talk, they could have done that before they actually engaged in going out of the country and misrepresenting.
But the reality is people are not as clever and honest as you are. That's the point. I mean, honestly, politicians have their own agendas very, very often, and activists like AfriForum also does the same thing. We need to move on, but you made your point, Mplongo. Thanks for that. Aima in Cape Town, go for it.
Hi, Asha.
How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Let's hear what you have to say
I'm
on
very well,
AfriForum too. Yeah.
thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. Go for it, yeah.
Yes, I've got a concern regarding that. I want to use the whole and trying to investigate. How do you call them, the AfriForum and all those things. I believe that it's not a good move at the moment because of what's going on around and all the turmoil. I think it would have been wise if they had to wait a little bit, get everything calmed down, and then try to find out exactly what went down, because it's like the government is reacting out of peer pressure, and which is not good.
So what should the government do then?
I believe that they should wait. They should first calm the storm, because remember, we're still in the middle of the storm. We're not out. So now, if they put more pressure on everything, it will make it look like AfriForum is right. You know, so why do we have to fight them now? Why not fight them before? That's my opinion.
All right. Well, thank you for that opinion, Amar in Cape Town. Nice first time we've spoken, I think, right? Nice to get, young and old, male, female, boys, girls, different callers, different perspectives. And we all learn here together on the National Pulse. Okay, let's talking about further comments. Here we are.
Hello, Ashraf. In South Africa, it's very, very petty. It's very, very petty. All the people, they are taking bribes. People are corrupt, even at work. We could find it at Eskom. People that are working at Eskom, they are paying bribes. You go there, you look for work, you can't get employed because people are relying on bribes. People that are on top there, they are relying on bribes. You will find that you can't get work without paying. Ashraf is bad. It's very, very, very bad in South Africa.
What's that? No work, no pay. And that means something completely different in this case, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf Ganda and the SFM listeners. About the U.S. cutting the HIV aid to African countries and the world, instead of complaining, murmuring about the U.S., why don't we develop our own with what we have that was funded using technology? We can clown this or pay the US if we can develop, run mobile project.
Because it can't just happen in one day. That's really the issue, right? There's another comment regarding JMPD.
Hi, Ashraf. It's interesting listening to your interview with the JMPD spokesperson. But one thing that I would tell you is that corruption in South Africa is at a state whereby what he's saying, it's not gonna work, because if the people who are up there are corrupt, so how do you expect the mere policemen on the street not to be corrupt? Yeah. Then we're at a place whereby we are used to it as residents of South Africa, but what can we say? South Africa, corruption is the order of the day.
Nice, man. That's not the way I want to end the show. Here's the last one I can play.
JMPD, let me tell you, Ashraf, all of South African law enforcement is corrupt. I will tell you something very close to my heart. Those people in this police station, nearest police station, they took bribes in order to sit on the case of the murder of my brother. So I will tell you now, I hate cops passionately because they know the truth. They took some money. Through my own investigations, I've established that. If you need evidence, I can give it to you. So I hate cops passionately because that's all they know, these corrupt things. Yes. Zoretu speaks in Bombela currently.
Sure. Okay, you got us thinking as we end the show. But thank you for listening. Thanks for the contributions. Missed out on some calls, on some WhatsApps. Just didn't have enough time. My apologies for that. It does happen. We'll do it again tomorrow, once again, with the National Pulse from 3 to 6. So please look out for it, and then I get a feel of your pulse as well. It's 6 o'clock, just gone past 6. In fact, here's the news with Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Enjoy the rest of your evening. In this news update, Ramaphosa hails relations with Mozambique and a welcome drop in fuel prices. Good evening. President